Let's see how far they are. So I was looking through a lot of the changes that actually did happen
Okay.
as far as for Mythic. I'm trying to figure out how hard they actually do look. Where are they at right now? How many pulls have they gotten? Do you know?
I
Are
have
they, are
no
they like
idea
just getting
actually.
started?
Okay, just one second.
Actually, in the Nightbot right now, it says that their best attempt so far was 29% on Father.
29%. Okay, so that means they've gotten through both of the transitions because the transitions happen at 33 and 66%.
Yeah, it says that they got. It says Father and Zigzag 29 and 23%.
Okay. Holy
Very
shit.
interesting.
They're actually doing
So
really well then.
yeah, so this is kind of the interesting thing with this race. I think
Okay.
everybody kind of assumed that this one should be quick, right? Everybody
Yeah.
kind of assumed that this is one of those things that potentially they can get through in the day. So
Yeah.
when you have Method waiting for that reset, this should be NAs pretty easily, and it looks like they're cruising through this boss without too much of a problem as we jump into a fresh bull here. This raid, I have to say, I'm a fan of tentacles all in all, but this
Same.
raid just looks fantastic.
Well, it's only two bosses, right? And they're already like, I mean, what's kind of crazy to me is that they haven't killed the first boss already. I mean, whenever you think about it, there's two bosses in here. Usually the first one's a joke. And if you've got Limit here wiping on this boss, and it's been like at least 5 hours or so, and the second boss is way fucking harder than the other one, I don't even know what to say. That's insane.
Yeah, I think that's one of the really cool things too about having one of these intermediary tiers
Yeah.
where none of the bosses have to be a joke. I feel like there is a level of handholding that needs to exist in a fresh tier where, that first boss, it's going to be a bit of a bitch. This time around, you have two bosses that are the real deal. And I think what was said by the developers too was both of the bosses were essentially thought of as Jaina difficulty, even though that might not mean that all of the mechanics are going to line up to be as difficult. That means as far as numeric tuning, they expect it to be as difficult as the end boss of the previous raid. Obviously, you got a little bit of time to get more gear to make something like that a little bit easier, but they expected for these bosses to be kind of that difficulty level, that Jaina difficulty level.
Well, that's about right. I mean, you look at the way that these fights are. I mean, these are people that are geared out. They're probably 420 average or at least 418 average item level, and they're still wiping on these bosses. I think a lot of people went into heroic and normal and they one-shot it or two-shot it with their guild, but obviously they do that because they're completely over-geared for it. And whenever you look at people actually going into these new fights that they're actually tuned for their gear level, you're seeing a completely different story. I mean, these fights are incredibly hard. And this is like, again, like the best skills. Like nobody's killed this shit before. And this far into the raid tier, you compare this with like what was our last like kind of semi-raid or like small raid was Trial of Valor. People cleared Odin very quickly, and getting over to Helya didn't take any time at all. But now, I mean, like the raid's been out for what, 6 hours, and we still haven't even seen the first boss die.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the hold in trial was kind of warm, right? And that was so
Yeah.
much a gear check, right? Like that was very much a gear check. Also, you guys obviously did already see that was a pretty early wipe as well. So when
Yeah.
Asmon says that this is difficult, not only is it difficult, they had an early wipe. It's not like they're consistently getting to this 29% mark. I'm not even sure if they got to 2 relics there. I think that might have only been one of the relic
That was
phases.
like one relic. That was pretty much it. So the way the fight works is basically like they have to have each of these guys consume 2 relics. And I'm pretty sure it's the same on Mythic. I'll double check, but I'm pretty sure that's the way that it works.
I think it might be 3 relics, and then you get power overwhelming. If you could go through all 3 of the relics. I'm a little. I need to double check on Mythic if you can actually go for power overwhelming if you want it. That's going to give the relic.
It's
if you try
3 relics.
relic.
Yeah, excuse me. Yeah, it is 3 relics.
If you do repeat a relic, there's basically a debuff called power overwhelming, which would make that relic 300%.
Well, it makes it gives
it.
the boss 300% bonus damage. It basically makes them like one-shot everybody. Like you can handle it on heroic if you only get one debuff and you have the person that's tanking it, like that's very, very tanky, and they also are getting like spam healed. But on Mythic, I'm pretty certain that if you get a 300% damage buff, you're basically dead. Because if you look right over here, right, you see the guy with the X on his marker, right, and he's getting attacked. The reason for that is basically the way that you tank Zaljax, which is the caster, is that you have to have a range tank it. In the same way that you were doing that back in, what was that, Black Temple with Illidan and having like the searing fire or whatever during the demon phase. Basically, Zaljax, he does a cast on someone and each cast that hits him increases the successive amount of threat that player generates. So it allows a ranged player to actually tank the boss. And they also have to
call
move
him.
Go ahead.
Zach's ass. I think that's
Zach's
what we're gonna
ass?
call this guy. Yeah, Zach's ass and father.
I like that a lot
that's
better.
pretty
Yeah,
good.
let's go with that.
I think that's good. So Zach's ass, you guys now know how to deal with Zach's ass. Keep that in mind. Also, you need to keep in mind how you're going to deal with these eldritch abominations. These bad boys going to explode once you do take them down. They're going to need to focus on these ads very quickly. There's a lot of explosions that can happen on this encounter. One of the relics, of course, going to be the big bad bubble. You want to make sure that you get all of that damage redirected to the bubble. Otherwise, it is going to explode for its remainder of the health pool. Dude, this is actually so much better than having to cast at an actual show. I can do whatever the heck I want right now.
Yeah, that's
like,
right.
I literally, I started, taking off my shoes and stuff, and I was like,
Yep.
I don't need to stop. I can wear exactly as many clothes as I want right now. As we see them unloading on Zach's ass.
It's a sec. Just want to make sure that I added and I gave him some credit since he was kind enough to let us restream his thing.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
Guys,
yeah.
He's pumping. I've gotten a chance to. He's been coming into my stream every now and then. I've gotten a few chances to talk to him. It's really interesting to see kind of how this guild has come together too, and I feel like they're getting so much more of a spotlight recently. I mean, you can see how long has THD actually been streaming? I think now is kind of that opportunity where all of a sudden he has the potential to be in the spotlight. When you talk about all the great warlocks, he's very much in that conversation. Sorry, when you talk about all of the great players, all the great casters, he's very much in that conversation, and being able to flex throughout so many of these different raid tiers. I'm actually trying to think of the amount of different classes that we've seen so many of the players in Limit play throughout all of the different progressions that they have been competing in. You have so many players in these guilds that have been able to flex.
Well, they multi-class like crazy, and I think that's probably just there's a lot of reasons for that, but one of the big reasons is the fact that back in the day, you used to have to do that whenever you did the split runs, and you'd have to get multiple characters geared. You remember whenever Blackhand was the last boss in Blackrock Foundry, and you needed such a tight comp, you didn't really want to bring any melee. You only wanted to have balanced druids and hunters for aspect of the cheetah or aspect of the pack. I forgot what it was, and the comp requirements are so specific, and you even see it now. Let's look at the damage meter here. Shadow Priest, Shadow Priest, Shadow Priest, Shadow Priest. It's just dozens of Shadow Priests, not dozens, but it's maybe even a dozen Shadow Priests that they're bringing into this raid just to make sure that they're able to make the damage requirement and beat this boss, because obviously Shadow Priests excel on killing 2 targets at the same time.
Yeah, I think the thing is as well, when you look at this raid, that's exactly the class that you would want to see do really well.
Yeah, exactly.
I love this. I actually love when there is class stacking for progression. It's not something that I think should be mandatory for the average player, but I love seeing different groups figure out these crazy things. That's the fun part of watching a race to me. Yes, it's cool to see them move through mechanics, but seeing just stupid stuff like this. How many Shadow Priests are actually in the group right now? We can't even see all the
It's got to be
it's
at least 6. And it could probably be more than that. So at least 6, but probably something like 8 or 9 Shadow Priests.
Yeah,
or potentially
8 or 9, so they're probably actually just looking at those raid.
8 Shadow Priests. So literally almost half the raid is Shadow Priests. And this isn't the first time this has happened. I mean, you remember back in Cataclysm, whenever Nefarian Heroic died, because the first guild that killed him was Paragon, and they used 8 or 9 or 10 Guardian Druids because of the way the debuff worked with Guardian Druids. Then you saw that again with Spine of Deathwing, and all of the really kind of out of the blue ideas that these guilds have is always really interesting to see. And one thing that I'm really glad about seeing this time is the fact that Limit is streaming to begin with. Because last time around, Limit didn't stream their progression, and I think that did add a certain level of ominence. Oh my god, when is Limit just gonna tweet out that they accidentally killed Jaina? Or not accidentally, but they actually killed Jaina. And, Method didn't know what was going on. Everybody was in the dark. And I think there was a cool element to that, but I think what's even cooler is actually being able to see the progress in real time here.
So let's talk about some of the reasons that potentially they are streaming this race. I think one of the big reasons you say Limit streams this race is because there is nothing to lose in their mind. They're not giving up any information at all.
Yep.
Typically, one of those things is the biggest advantage that they do have is going to be that early reset time, right? They're going to have that reset on Tuesday. They come in, they bang as hard as they can, they get as far into the raid as possible. But then you have Method waking up, and they could easily just look at the VOD, and that does some of their homework for them. And I think one of the fun parts about, like you said, what happened with the last tier was this just like, we have no idea how they were, like how far they were.
Yeah.
And all of these rumors that were swirling around about like, they're stuck here. This is the way that we're doing it. Well, this guy said to this guy who said to this guy. And then Method is trying to unpack some of that information, make strategies based off of that, then go their own direction saying, well, if they're stuck with this strategy, maybe we should try something else. It was a great element, but I agree with you. When we start to get these races where they're streamed on all sides, it doesn't get much better than that. I just wish they started on the same day. I think we all kind of agree on that.
I think it's going to be a really interesting series of events if we see them oh, that was not good right there. If somebody didn't soak something and it just ended up killing half the raid. So that's a quick wipe right there.
Time and time again, was that a soak there, or was that actually an explosion?
I'm not sure exactly what that was. Let me go ahead and look and see.
I think all of the mechanics that cause explosions are hitting for a truckload on Mythic. It just looks like the tuning is crazy on Mythic.
Oh, it's fucking ridiculous. Well, it's the same as like any Mythic fight, you know? Like, if you make one mistake, you're dead. And whenever you do, like, yeah, let's look at this guy's gear. Yeah, he's got 414, 416. So his gear isn't even, like, really ridiculous, assuming it's not, like, you know, fully socketed or anything. But, I mean, they're still having tons of trouble with this. And it doesn't seem like they're burning this fight down extremely fast. Like, I think this fight is probably about the same difficulty. Like, probably that they tuned it for, like, Stormwall Blockade, maybe. Because don't you think that would probably make sense?
Yeah, so think about it this way. Basically, to beat Jaina...
Yeah.
It's tuned to have gear off of Jaina, right? Like
exactly.
That's kind of the way that you think about that end game boss. It's basically at least tuned to have the gear that the boss drops. I know that sounds like a little bit counterintuitive, but that's kind of the benchmark. So we assume that these bosses are around that level. So it's not a crazy absurd amount of gear that you necessarily need to do it after we've already been inside of that raid for such a long time. But you're going to have people that have a little bit less gear because Shadow Priest is just going
well, that was also his ult, too. So obviously he's not going to be as geared as possible. I think that really what I was trying to show is the fact that even with people that are as geared as they are, right? It's not like, doesn't matter if it's alt or anything. Like, this is like a 415 plus average item level group. And the bosses drop, I think it's 415 or 410 gear. And they're still struggling on it. And I think it's really interesting because this is the same thing that they did with Trial of Valor. And I think that we're maybe seeing a little bit of an idea that Blizzard is trying to put out there, which is kind of like a challenge raids. You know, like raids that are tuned for basically the gear that they drop. So you can't just automatically overgear them in the same way that you could with, you know, most of the early bosses and BOD, etc. And we could see something like Mythic Helya. And I think the fact that these bosses have like those really interesting drops that do change the way that like you play your characters, kind of like the Trident and the Darkstone and, you know, these other things that are really good for PvP as well. I think that really makes the challenge raids a little bit more appealing. And I could see Blizzard doing this more often, actually. These smaller raids that are really hard.
Yeah. There are so many things about the way that this actually works that I want to see so much more frequently. I really do like it. And as people are mentioning in the chat, with that item level 420. So as they do get some of the gear, like Asmon was kind of saying, like if you can get some of that 420 gear in your back pocket, you could really probably blaze through these encounters much more quickly, especially when we know that they're going to have a lot of defensive utility as well, right? I think that that's one of the things thematically when we do look at the loot this time around, the fact that you're not only getting item level, you're not only getting secondary progression, you're actually going to have these procs. This time, the theme was very focused around some defensive utility, and we've all heard about the legendary tanks like Bajira being able to get that holy
I love
trinity,
it, dude.
that Exodia. Oh yeah, just
whenever I loot these items and I just feel my arena rating going up. It's beautiful.
Yeah, it makes you somewhat invincible, taking a nice strong hit of that.
I watched the video of Sidhu being AFK while he was being attacked in a twos match. I don't know if somewhat is enough of a word to describe it. I think it's just invincible at some point, and
There was
it's
also,
insane.
That was also shamans, right? And
Yeah,
there
and
was kind of a
shamans.
period, not to talk about PvP too much,
Yeah.
but when you look at resto shamans, even before that gear came out, you had some clips of them inside of Pack Spirit. It was Colo who had a really funny clip.
Look
I know
at,
you've
dude,
done
look
toe-to-toe.
at the Warlock. Look at that damage. 86. This dude's pushing almost 90,000 DPS.
Oh yeah,
Imagine
well, okay,
that.
so also look at its spec, right? So for
Yeah,
anyone who's not
Destruction
familiar,
Warlock right there.
so what you're going to be able to do as the Destruction Warlock is you're going to be able to get out that Bane of Havoc. You're going to be able to spread your biggest damaging abilities across those two targets. So not only are you going to see good damage across two targets, it's going to be effective damage. Like, this isn't just pad. It's not just dot damage that's all over the place. It is going to be effective damage. Very important to see. Then also, it's kind of interesting that we do have like a Frost Mage able to keep up so much as well. I think a lot of that's probably going to be
Splitting
based
ice.
off the back of those ads.
Yeah,
so
that's
you have
why they're so
splitting
close
ice,
together too.
then you're going to be able to get your Frostbomb out once
Yep.
those Eldritch Horrors are going to be coming out.
Well,
and
let's
then
talk
also
about the Eldritch Horrors. So the way they work is basically 3 of them spawn, and they all start casting an explosion that will make them explode and do a lot of damage. Every single explosion that goes off puts a debuff on the raid that increases the damage they take from the next explosion that's going to happen. So you have to stagger out the explosions and make sure the ads die not all at the same time by blowing themselves up. Their health pool is so high it's not realistic to kill them, so you have to let them explode and kill themselves, and you have to stagger out the explosions, and that's basically what's going on whenever those guys do come out, and that's why nobody swaps over to them or anything.
And not to get on a soapbox right now, but
Okay.
I kind of feel like this is one of those things when we talk about stuff that we like about this tier, and I feel like you're probably in a similar boat. You have mechanics that are in line with what the rewards actually are. Like, thematically, it all lines up so well. And I feel like this is definitely the tier that I look at this and I say, this is how rewards should be structured. Do I want bubbles all the time on my gear? Oh, heck no. But do I want stuff that actually feels like it comes from the raid? Do I want to feel incentivized to do a raid instead of just making sure I get the same mythic gear season after season after season? I think this is 100% a fantastic step in the right direction. We're also seeing how much it's challenging the best players in the world.
Well, it makes the game more interesting, and I think that's the main thing. Whenever that Visage comes out, by the way, they have to kill it before you get that cast off, because if they get the cast off, it fears the entire raid. And with all the different AoE damage and like swirlies that are going around, if you end up messing that up and you have the cast go off, there's almost a guarantee that at least 3 or 4 or 5 people are going to die, and it's going to be a wipe, especially whenever you have the Eldritch Abominations out, because you're not able to interrupt them.
Yeah, now also keep in mind the fact that you're needing to move through all of these relics. So that's kind of the main way to think about this fight. You need to go through each of the relics one time. This pool so far has been one of the cleanest, and we've seen them managing everything so well. And we should be getting into another relic here very quickly. They look fantastic this time around. Keep in mind, 30% on both of the bosses was about the best attempt that we've seen so far. And we are going to see Father right now already in that area as we start to see those big, beefy Chaos Bolts spread out once again. That Warlock's still going to be pumping, but the Shadow Priest managing to catch up here. The question is, do we have a new best pool on our hands? Everybody
might
looking
have
relatively
one.
healthy, only 2 down.
Let's see. We've got Zaljax just went under 50%. He's got the Absorb Shield up. They need to break that Absorb Shield or the entire raid dies. The Absorb Shield has a fixed amount of health on it, and if they don't break it in time, it explodes for the amount of health that's left remaining. It's basically an inverse of the way that it works in the second boss fight. So they already got through the second transition there, the second item, and now really they only have 2 more to go. So as long as they can get both of these done, we could actually be seeing a kill attempt right here.
We definitely could, right? I think this is one of those fights where you don't necessarily say that it ramps up in difficulty phase by phase until that 30% mark. It's going through the motions perfectly, as you did mention, with the way that the tuning is going to change. They also did invest a battle res here, I do believe. So that means that they are really seeing this as a potential kill as well. This is not a learning pool at all. Already in the area that I do think that this is one of the best. Obviously, they do need to put a little bit more pressure there on Zach's ass. 35%. They got that to around 27%.
They're pushing the first transition right here. This is the second to last relic that's going out right now. Fathul just went below 25%, and we're about to see the relic ability going off, and they have to damage down that Visage over to the right. If it gets that cast off, which you know it's going to get that cast off, it's going to fear everybody. This is going to be a wipe right here. I'm like 100% sure that's a wipe. So that was just, yeah, I mean, that was just a really bad positioning, because obviously the Visage was over there by the other relic, and they weren't really quite ready to be able to damage down that Visage and make sure to interrupt the piercing echo or the terrifying echo. And with the ads over on the other side of the room, I'm sure the melee had trouble, if there are any melee, had trouble switching over, and it just ended up not working out. And you could say that was positioning or any other number of things, but ultimately it was just kind of a bad timing, because as soon as they pushed that third relic, the immediate cast went off at the same time, and so it just kind of split their attention, and it ended up being a wipe.
So I want to bounce off of what you said there, because I definitely followed you on everything except for one thing. I'm not sure what melee is, so I'm a little confused there.
I don't think they do either.
That for now.
So don't worry.
Yeah, I don't think that I'm not 100% sure what that is, but besides that, I totally agree with you. But I'm going to offer up another thing that could have potentially happened there. I think you get to a situation where you see that health on the two bosses, and you say, okay, well, what do we do here? Are we going for the Hail Mary pass, or should we try to figure out what some of those timings look like? And I think as a raid leader, maybe you make the decision, you have that Visage to deal with. You have a lot of things that you do need to be juggling with, but let's just try to push for another transition, because that does seem to be the roadblock that they were already at before we even jumped in. So I think that they were just trying to figure out how exactly you can try to get into that transition. So that mistake may have just given them a lot of information. As you heard Asmon already say, there are a lot of things that contribute to why that turns into a wipe, but now they have more data. Now they know that going into the next transition. So we're going to be looking for that 30% mark here again on this pull. We've seen some early ones coming through, and I think that a lot of those early pulls as well does really just come down to the fact, like you said, Asmon, one mistake here is pretty much a wipe.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like if you have one person do anything wrong, especially with a lot of these mechanics, it can immediately wipe the raid. There's also a dispel mechanic that deals damage to everybody on Mythic, and that makes things much more difficult. But I really did like what you were saying about people testing the waters and testing the limits of what's possible and what's not. I think that, whenever I go into a new raid, a lot of times I stand in the mechanics and I do them wrong on purpose just to see what happens if you do it wrong. And testing those boundaries, I think, really is what the guild is trying to do here. And that way they know how far they can go, how much they can push things, and what risks they can take versus what risks they can't take. So I think that going forward here, we're going to see a lot better placement on the different ads that are coming out of Zalzax that do the cast for the Terrifying Screech. We're going to see much better positioning with those.
Yeah, and I think that that's a really important thing to say, because there are two things that come with that. When you actually do, okay, so that's just going to be a wipe. That just happens. We're going to pretend that didn't happen. But when you do put yourself in mechanics that are very dangerous, you know that they're dangerous, and you're testing the limits. You find things that you can potentially get away with, right? And that's going to open up emergent strategies. It's a very important thing when you are trying to be in a guild that is progressing. The other thing is if you wipe and you're a player that's known to do science things, you just look brave instead of dumb. So guys, continually pretend that you are just pushing the limits of the game, and you can get away with pretty much anything.
There's always an excuse for every kind of mistake. If you're good enough at it, you can rationalize every mistake you could ever make in a raid. And I'm sure that, and like for these players, obviously, they're not making mistakes on the same rate that we are, or, a lot of other average players are. But you see this on any different level of difficulty. And I've always used the analogy is that people have fumbles in the Super Bowl. You can have dumb, silly mistakes happen at any different level of play. And it happens with a surprising degree of regularity. And it's something that could seem very simple, but having 20 people do the right thing at the right time for 8 minutes, all at the same time, that's pretty damn hard to do. And it's completely okay, right? It's not a big deal, but at the same time, I think at this point, with how close they are, they're probably just waiting to have that pull where everything just goes their way, and at the same time, nobody makes a mistake. And you see them already positioning
sports
from
ball
behind.
Analogy too, right? When you do talk about something like football, it's like, why do some of those mistakes actually happen? on the biggest playing field.
Pressure.
It's not necessarily going to be, it's pressure is one of them, but also like think about the other things that are going on. You have a giant human being running at your face, right? Like that is something that inherently is going to open up a margin for error. On this one, you got a bunch of tentacles wiggling in your face. Like there is a potential margin for error. But as you do test those limits, like I do think it is so important. You get more and more comfortable with those things that are meant to throw you off balance. When you've played football for a really long time and you're used to somebody coming at your face to try to actually take you down and tackle you, you get used to that. It becomes second nature. And that's why so many times after we do see that pull that Asmon talks about, that miracle pull where all the stars align and they're able to take down the boss, after that happens, like the boss is instantly on farm. Like, why does that happen? It's because you have confronted it. The pressure is now gone. You are used to all of these things. You've basically
there's no
learned
performance
a whole
anxiety.
New lexicon.
Like you've already gone through it once, you know what it's going to take, and you just replicate that exact behavior. And I think that's really something that obviously you can see from, you have these guilds that they take 500 pulls to kill it the first time, and there's relatively no gear change between the first and the second time. And the second time it takes them, 20 or 30 pulls to get it down. And it's just practice and being able to visualize and experience it going right. And I think just being able to see it work and see it happen in your own eyes is something that's really important. And here, they're probably just waiting for that pull, because I do think that they've pretty much got everything locked down, especially like, with ours. They've got the abomination timings down. That's no problem. And really, I think like every single wipe that they've had has just been kind of like a freak accident.
Yeah, besides those 30% wipes, right? Like those are the wipes that we kind of are anticipating. But yeah, and those are definitely going to happen as well. But I remember the first time that we ever commentated together. We were on Feta Devour, and we remained on Feta Devour the entire time I was in London. I literally I got to a different country, and they were still working on Feta Devour. I casted a PvP tournament. They were still on Feta Devour. We crowned a champion for that tournament. They were still on Feta Devour. And so many times, I think that was the most insight I've ever really gotten into how progression worked, that I never really, you can watch streams, but talking to somebody like Sko, how they were making the decisions was so interesting, because there was this level all the time of like, we need to figure out if this is possible or not. So we're doing so many different things to just figure out if this line of play is possible. And sometimes when you watch these attempts, you'll see these weird ideas, and that's why sometimes people are asking like different questions about ad management and things like that. It's just like, is it possible to do this? Is it possible to deal with the visage, for example, in this way? Is this going to be a way that can result in a kill in any dimension? Does it rely on a perfect pill?
Well, you've seen a lot of things like that where you remember back in Wrath of the Lich King, Sartharian 3 Drakes 10-man, a very, very common strategy was to just burn the boss down and not even worry about any of the mechanics. And oftentimes you see like guilds that are very, very high end trying to do these different kind of off the wall strategies to see if they can do something that Blizzard didn't intend and that'll end up letting them kill the boss. It doesn't happen that often anymore, but every once in a while you do see something that's similar like that. Like Feta Devour is actually a really good example, because I remember, I think that one of the ideas they were trying to do was chain the monk circles of peace to where Feta Devourer couldn't run to the corpuscules to eat them. So that would effectively, like, that's not the way the fight is supposed to work, but if they can take advantage of that, they've got a free kill on the boss. And I think one thing that was really interesting about Feta Devourer specifically is that it was a DPS check boss, and DPS check bosses make everything much more tight, and they make everything much more specific in what you need to do. Like, because if you can't just like wait around and wait for perfect RNG, you have to play things as they happen. And that perfection and precise gameplay on those DPS check bosses, which I don't really know if this is going to be a real big DPS check boss. I wouldn't really expect to see it at least on the same level as Feta Devourer, but bosses like that really do challenge people, and it makes it so much more interesting to see the individual micro decisions and micro behaviors that players take, especially at a high level, in order to like maximize their damage and do all the mechanics correctly.
Man, you got me thinking about fucking sports right now.
I'm sorry.
I'm going to use another sports analogy here, but I think one of the things that is so crazy about those DPS checks, about fights like that, is there is this level of, it's just like, yeah, you can't overcome it, right? Like you can't overcome simply not having enough damage to push through. But also it goes back to, so there's a story about the mile, right, and the time with the mile, and nobody thought that. I forget if it was like, I think maybe it was like the 6-minute barrier or something like that. Nobody thought that anybody could
4
beat
minutes.
this time.
Nobody could run faster than a 4-minute mile, I believe.
Yeah, it was some. See, this goes back. You know a lot about sports. What the fuck, dude? But basically, there was a limit on the mile, and everybody thought that this was like legitimately a human limit. They thought that this was a limit to the human body. After that record was broken, like fucking high schoolers started beating it, right? Like all of a sudden, because people knew that it was possible, they were able to actually.
There's like a psychological component to it, where like people limit themselves because they don't believe that it can happen.
Exactly, and I think that happens on a lot of these fights, more so than we actually admit. Because even with Fed to Devour, once people did figure out that strategy, obviously that boss got nerfed into the ground. But when you are actually figuring out these new encounters, there's always this idea in the back of your head of, can we even do this? And once you figure out that you can, all of a sudden other guilds are going to be able to step up to the plate and do the same thing as we see another pool underway.
Well, as I said, I mean, like, yeah, as soon as you can actually just like visualize it and you can see it happening, I think it makes it just 1,000 times easier. And what I'm seeing here is like they're changing it. What is it?
Your chat, because I was talking about the mile thing, your chat was just like, steroids? Like steroids came out?
Yeah,
I don't think
it is steroids. Like, I mean, I think I got to like 5.5 minutes or something like that whenever I was in like middle school. The idea that you can't do 4 whenever you're like a trained professional athlete, there's no way. Like, you don't need steroids to do a 4-minute mile. You obviously have to be really good.
5.5 minute mile?
No, 5.5.
That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, that was also a really long time ago before I started playing WoW. So
yeah.
You know, it's seen better days. And you see right now, so obviously they're just cleaning up those Eldritch Abominations, and they were holding damage there, and they're going to put Zaljax right here down to 75% and go into his first artifact usage right here. And this is where he's going to start summoning the ads, and everybody is going to have to switch off and get ready to kill those ads. And here we go. There's the Empower Relic. And they've really just got to make sure that they just keep them together for the spread damage. And there's the Visage right there. They need to swap over to that Visage and kill it before it casts that Terrifying Echo. Damage on the Visage is actually pretty slow here, but I think that could also just be a calculated decision, so they won't accidentally over damage it with all their dots, because of course they have so many dot classes, and that way they can maximize damage on both of the bosses, which obviously, again, whenever you're talking about, you know, like a world first environment, whenever you're trying to push the limits, like what we've been talking about this whole time, you need to be playing with that in mind. You can't just, you know, kind of just do things willy-nilly. You've actually got to focus and do everything with a very, very specific mindset in I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's actually crazy though when you watch the Visage go down there, how perfectly timed it did seem. It was almost like the Visage was just
they planned it out very well.
Yeah, it looked so perfect there. We are really starting to see some of the rehearsing really pay fruition. But I do want to note as well, one of the things that's kind of interesting about the current dynamic of how these raids look, obviously this one's looking like it is going to be a wipe pretty shortly here. They're probably even going to, there we go. The thing is when we actually do look at, and this is a thing that I haven't really talked about before, but look at the weak auras that you already do see on the screen. It's very interesting with that delay now that happens with Mythic, what it actually looks like add-on wise for a lot of these groups.
It's hilarious. I mean, you remember back in Nighthold where basically weak auras played the game for Exorcist. I mean, I was genuinely impressed. Like the weak aura, the Exorcist weak auras were cleaner than the actual UI. Like it just completely changed the fight for Star Augur and Gul'dan. It was absolutely incredible. It was like bordering on AVR levels back in ICC. And you see these mechanics. Yeah, it's ridiculous how powerful these different add-ons are. And I think weak auras is probably one of the most interesting tools that there is because it's so open-ended. You have people using weak auras for all kinds of different things, you know, whether it's a food buff or a boss mechanic, and they've just got all of this stuff really, really sorted out. And I think that's one of the really interesting things about like these like really high-end races is you see how these raiders, not only are they playing their classes and their characters and, you know, their raids, or everybody's performing highly, but you see what other tools they're bringing into the fight. You know, how are they using add-ons? How are they using their communication? And those things I think are really interesting because that's something that can be replicated by the entire player base. And the way these players utilize these different tools, these add-ons, is always something that really does set them apart. And I think Nighthold was probably the epitome of that.
Just so people do know, for anyone who doesn't know what AVR is, it was an add-on that was so powerful and so beloved that it actually got its own game called WildStar. So I would definitely look that up. It basically became its own MMO. It didn't last that long, but what an add-on it was. And I spent a lot of time in ICC messing around with that bad boy. Basically just a GPU hack that got completely banned.
Yeah, it's the difference between an add-on and basically a cheat. It is just a cheat. It's like, okay, well, all right, so you stand, don't move out of the green circle. Okay, easy. And, you know, any guesswork is just removed. It's beautiful.
Yeah, I remember on, I guess it was Professor Putricide, the slimes used to bounce. And I remember AVR would literally tell you where every slime would bounce in the entire fight. You would just wait for it, and you would just stand somewhere where it didn't bounce, and you wouldn't have to move the entire fight. It was absolutely bananas. But I think, too, now when you look at how these raids do progress, that is such an important skill. Obviously, it's not AVR, but having somebody who can come in and actually create these scripts as quickly as possible. Think about something like, Mechatork, right? Like Mechatork, I think the first thing that we were all asking is what the heck are people going to do add-on wise to try to alleviate some of that burden of actually seeing which colors you need to click.
Well, you're completely right. I think Mechatork is a really good example of add-ons because obviously Blizzard, it feels like, especially in BFA, they've been trying to incentivize more player communication in the middle of the dungeons. And I don't know if that's some sort of like an indirect way of them trying to get people to use the voice chat more often. It's really hard to say, but I can easily see that this is something that they are trying to prioritize. And you can see the amount of interrupt rotations you need on bosses and even trash mobs in Shrine. And also with bosses like Mechatork, that communication is really, really meaningful, and it's something that Blizzard wants to focus on. The only thing that's funny about that is whenever people end up making add-ons that completely make any communication, the only communication that's happening is the communication between everybody's different add-ons, basically. And it is always kind of funny to see that.
Yeah, I think that it's also one of those fantastic things when you actually do look at an encounter and you know, we've been talking to each other in the game for years, right? You say stack here, run away, like simple things. And all of the sudden, after 15 years of WoW, they actually came up with a new way to scream at each other and a new way to get pissed off at each other. That's the reason that we keep coming back for more. I think Mechatork was one of those fights too, where it really is an eye-opener. And then even before that, you have some of these fights that they're essentially your brick walls, right? I think Fetid Devourer was the one that really broke the mold, but spatially they interacted in such a different way.
Well, Star Augur is probably the best example of a spatial, non-verbal communication fight.
That whole raid, raid had so much interesting shit going on. Man, it is so cool to be able to curse, man.
It's crazy to think, like, number one, fuck yeah, it is. Number two, it's crazy to think how fucking badass. Like, it's something where, like, you don't know what you've got until it's gone. Nighthold was amazing.
It was definitely
an amazing raid. Like, I really think that it was a lot better than I thought it was whenever it was in progression. And I think there's a lot of reasons for that, but damn, like, that was really, really fun. Okay, and as you can see here, Cthulhu just went under 50%. We've got the Abominations coming out. This could actually be a little bit sketchy because they also have the Visage happening at the same time. They've got 3 things going on all at the same time. Are they going to get the Visage down? It looks like they are. That's pretty damn good. Moving out with the debuffs. The reason they're moving out with those debuffs, by the way, for anybody who isn't familiar with the fight, is that those debuffs do more damage the closer you are to other players. So that's why anybody that gets those 2 moves out to the edge of the room so they can reduce the amount of incoming raid damage. And especially in times like that, it was really important for them to do that right. And again, I think one of the examples here, and we can kind of go back to what we were saying before about how we were saying that these different guilds, that as soon as you're able to kill it once, you're just able to kill it again very easily. Being able to continue doing your rotation and especially adhere to the mechanics and know exactly what you need to do, even whenever things are just going crazy, is something that really does separate a lot of these players and makes them substantially better.
And also, it's a very difficult decision. I mean, this is one of the craziest times I think you'll ever see it, but look, I think that we can go out on a limb here. All of us in chat can probably agree on this. We can go out on a limb here. Even though we maybe haven't watched Limit stream before, I think we're relatively confident that not all of these people who are on Shadow Priest right now are Shadow Priest mains, right? And that's a very difficult thing when you're actually in a guild, because exactly what you said. You basically need to be performing a song and dance at the same time. You need to be
Yes.
doing all of the mechanics that are going on inside of the raid, and then also do your rotation. The advantage that a lot of people have is they've been doing their rotation for just so goddamn long that it is second nature. It's the same as walking and chewing gum.
Yeah, having that muscle memory is extremely important. I mean, I can say from personal experience, going from playing a game like WoW that I have a lot of muscle memory to playing another game that's not WoW,
Yeah.
it's very jarring, to say the least. And you look at people like this, and they've been playing this game probably more than I have, and it's very common to see, obviously, people that are at that level that can execute the rotation even whenever things are going crazy. And I think that is something that really does separate, you know, let's say like a Mythic Raider from a Heroic Raider. And speaking of Mythic Raiders, these guys might be Mythic Raiders in Crucible here. They're about to actually kill the boss, I think. They're going into their last two relics. No, they've already used heroism, so all they really need to do is handle both of these relics at the same time. This ability that's going out is going to make it to where if you go under 25% health, this static shock thing is going, if you go under 25% health, it instantly kills you. So they need to make sure that they're keeping the entire raid topped up. They just lost 2 more people. Now, this is really bad, but as long as they can control the visages, this could actually still be a kill. And they just got that first visage down. They did let a fear, or no, they didn't get it down. I just noticed that. The fear went off, and they're able to recover from the fear. Now, Zaljax has done all of his different relics, and Fthul, all he has to do now is go through one more relic phase, and they're going to be able to kill the boss.
It's going to be really tricky to get past this right now. As you can see, this is the crescendo of the fight. Obviously, the more and more fear is going to be going out. The visage from beyond going to be very difficult to deal with as more and more players do fall. One of the best attempts that we have seen from them. But as you were mentioning, all of these different things that they were thinking about, they also need to be moving at a crazy degree because there is bad just all over on the floor. The fear goes off. You see some people actually getting feared into some of those shadow zones, getting taken out, and then it just becomes harder and harder to recover. And this is one of those things when you talk about how much those mistakes do snowball. You lose a damage dealer there, obviously.
It's like you have somebody die to one mechanic, and then they can't damage down the other mechanic to make sure it doesn't happen.
Exactly.
So it's very, very compounding. And I think that's one of the really interesting things about watching these like first races and everything is you see the fights probably in the way that Blizzard intended them to be seen. Because a lot of the intricacies and everything are really lost on most guilds because they get to the fights by the time that they're nerfed or by the time they overgear them. So you're not able to really have to deal with the same level of like coordination and play that you would need to if you didn't have the gear for it. And I think that's something that always made like, you know, challenge modes and stuff like that interesting. And also like Mythic Plus. I mean, you can even use this as a personal example almost everybody can relate to. On Mythic Plus, whenever you're doing a Mythic Plus 3, you don't really care or pay attention to what mechanics the trash mobs do. But whenever you're doing a Mythic Plus 13 or Plus 15, you start to actually learn what all those little trash mobs do. And the dungeons that seemed very simple actually become a lot more intricate and complex.
So a lot of people too talking right now inside of the chat about whether or not tremor totems are going to be used.
I think it's a horrify effect, isn't it? So tremor totem doesn't work?
Yeah, so I'm pretty sure that it's actually funny. So there are two different categories in WoW of fear. So one's fear and one's horrify, and a horrify is actually a polymorph DR. I'm pretty sure. It's a polymorph DR, but it's not a polymorph, right? Like it's
people in chat are saying tremor does work. I think really the fear is the most deadly component, but it's not the only component. You saw whenever that cast went out, 2 people also died from the cast, I believe. And that's because it does 95,000 damage. So even if you let the cast go off and you're able to mitigate it through Tremor Totem, you're still having your entire raid take nearly 100,000 damage. So
it also just happens a lot too, right?
Well,
so
it
it's
happens
like,
a lot, and it's at the end of the fight. Like it's at the end of the fight. So you've already used all of your cooldowns. You know, you're basically running on empty, doing the best that you can, trying to stay alive, and you have another 100,000, you know, raid damage go out. I mean, that's going to be really hard to be able to recover from. So they need to make sure that they don't let a cast like that go off. They can do that if both of the bosses, I would say, would be under 10% health. But until then, I think it would be basically impossible. You see heroism go out, and they're basically just trying to damage down these mobs as much as possible here.
Yeah, I was trying to double check. I actually, I'm trying to double check to see if it actually can be broken. because that was something I haven't even double checked yet, because it was one of those things where just didn't need to double check it when you were going through. I know you got world 7th, and you guys probably didn't have to worry about anything cheesy like that. 5th. Who actually got world 1st?
I don't know, actually. I have no idea.
Yeah, it's probably some like random try-hard LFR group that managed to get it down.
Yeah, they want to be on top of WoW progress for a week.
Yeah, how did this raid stack up for you as somebody who obviously you're going about it in an interesting way, but how did this feel difficulty-wise compared to some of the other tiers that you've actually pulled a group together for?
I really liked the first boss. I thought the first boss was really interesting, and I think the second boss was probably one of the best bosses that I've fought against for a long time. The tank mechanics were really interesting, and the transitions were really interesting too. The only thing that I didn't like, and this could also just be like a personal opinion of mine, I hate it whenever one person can mess the whole raid up. And that's basically what happens whenever you hit one of the void zones on the second boss. And that was an element of frustration, but I think the second boss had a very good combination of personal responsibility and also raid responsibility.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I think that was why we saw... It's very easy for all of us and how we play the game to... We don't necessarily always play with everybody who's on the highest of highest levels, right? We're not always playing with people in full 420
We try to
get
carried, but sometimes we fall a little bit short.
Yep. So there is kind of a level of course, we don't want to see somebody being able to wipe the entire raid, but you even hear that from the top level players inside of progression guilds. Like, a lot of the soak mechanics were things that they did not enjoy. They want to see less and less of those, but I think so far it has been answered. I think we see a lot less of those soak mechanics.
Well, and also, like, they're less consequential. So, for example, on the last boss here, second boss, I keep forgetting it's only 2 bosses in the raid. On the second boss, Ulout, or was it? Is it Umat? Unat. Whenever you fight Unat and you get hit by one of those circles, the boss just heals for 1% of its health. So it's a mistake. It affects the raid, but it's not a wiping mistake. And I think that's a really good way to be to have it. And I also really liked how on the second boss, you had to go through the lines and plan out how you were going to go through the 2 lines that are going through the room, because you'd have to go through one of them and then let the debuff drop, then go through the second one. So it's not like you could just go through both at the same time, but also you could if you wanted to use a cooldown or something like that. And I think that allows people to change up the way that they're going to do things. And I think one thing that's really interesting, and Gul'dan, going back to Nighthold again, Gul'dan was, I think, one of the epitomes of this, where there were so many different strategies that players had for being able to deal with Gul'dan and doing the fight, especially on Mythic. And you saw even at the end of the expansion, the way people dealt with the last phase, the Illidan phase on Gul'dan, is they just ignored the entire thing and they just burned him down. So, yeah. I mean, I think that we can maybe see some degree of that type of like agile gameplay and decision making on Unat as well. With this fight, I think it's much more straightforward, because there are so many things in this fight that you have to do. You know, you have to take them to the different relics. You have to kill these certain ads. You have to do these certain interrupts. This fight is much more of a dance, I believe, than a lot of the more open-ended fights. And I think that both of those things are valid and good. Helya was another example of a fight that was a dance. You go from, left to right to left to right to up to down, and you have to do everything in a perfect order. And it's really fulfilling and like kind of satisfying in an odd way to see everybody doing it right all at the same time. It's like synchronized swimmers or something. But I think this fight is a little bit similar to that.
I also think, though, and you kind of got me, not to get too far ahead of myself, but I'm already starting to think about that next boss fight. I think it is going to be the second boss in here. Hudat is just going to be so tough. I think we're going to see some really sketchy pulls. I think it's going to be looking even sloppier than watching you play Sekiro.
That's going to be really bad.
Yeah, it's gonna be a lot of messy wipes, that's for sure. Now, once again, we're gonna see that early lust coming out here. They get that damage rolling nice and quick before they even do get to that first relic. And right now, the mark has been 30% just about. I don't think that we've seen them. We've seen them push, but not get past the push on Father either. That's kind of the little marker right now in the fight that they're trying to get past.
They can do 5 relics, but 6 is really kind of where things fall apart. And I think, honestly, like, they have a strategy down. All they need to do is get to that point where everybody's alive and a mistake doesn't happen. Like that's really all it comes down to, is that, you know, even at this level, you are seeing mistakes, and you know, timings are right, and there's also like an element of luck. I think whenever anybody's done a boss fight where they can just barely kill the boss fight in their guild, you know that, you know, usually the first time that you kill the boss, there is an element of luck to that. Like, okay, these debuffs went on the right people. And I think that's probably the best example that I can use, is whenever you have people in your guild that are, you know, kind of the underperformers, and you just hope and pray that the important debuff doesn't go on that player. And with this, it's a little bit different, but it's also the same. And instead of it being just bad players, it's more because obviously everybody that we're seeing here are amazing players. What it is instead is bad classes. So if you have a class that's really good at dealing with a certain debuff, like the debuff where you have to run out of the raid in, if you have it go on a mage, for example, rather than a warlock, that does slightly make it easier because a mage can blink out, right? And like all these little things add up. And I think that's something that really,
a melee joke, but yeah, I think it is really important. It's who has that toolkit to actually deal with getting the mechanic. And you know, you talk about a mage or a warlock. What are things that they have? Well, they have blinks, for example, to be able to get out if you're a mage. If you need to move far away, a warlock going to be able to utilize something like the different portals that you can see all around, gateways, portals, all of these things going to be in the warlock toolkit. But what's the thing that makes a mage sometimes pull ahead? The fact that it has ice block, it has that immunity. You can go for these glowy brain plays time and time again. So all of those things definitely do come into an account. And sometimes you're just waiting for that right moment where a mechanic goes onto somebody who does have an immunity, goes onto somebody who's already in the right position as far as your stack is concerned. Very important to be looking out for. And some of those things, sometimes you do need a little bit of help, right? Sometimes you definitely need a little bit of help to get through some of these when you are progressing. I think that that's important as we see these Eldritch Abominations coming out one more time. This is the area where
they've already got 2 dead. This is a wipe.
3 down.
This is a wipe. Yeah, 100%. Like having the debuffs and the mechanics go in the right classes that have the best toolkit to deal with them actually does make a huge difference, especially in fights that are this tight. And I think that's probably something that they're waiting for. And also it's just a matter of coordination and planning. You see, like right now, look at all those statistics and everything that they're going through. And I think that's one of the things that also is really interesting about watching the the more high-end guilds play, is how specific they are and how many things they focus on, and all these statistics that a lot of people don't really understand or have the tools to parse through. A lot of these guilds, they use them very, very often, and it's what helps them actually kill the bosses, right? It's like DPS on each different specific ad, and the different timings in the fight, and how they're going to coordinate their cooldowns with those different ads. All of those things are really interesting.
Dude, if Method ends up getting world first, that'd be nuts.
I think the funniest thing that could happen is if Limit gets the world first, and then Method kills the boss too, but the time that it took Method to kill the boss is shorter than the time that it took Limit. So that means if the raid was released at the same time, Method would have been world first, but because it wasn't, Limit was world first. I don't know why. I just think that would be the biggest drama thing that could possibly happen. It would be hilarious to me.
I literally am going to make, like, if that does happen, I'm going to make like 30 Twitter accounts and just start drama between myself. Like, I'm just going to yell at myself on Twitter, just be like, no, idiot, NA forever. Like, it's going to be so much fun.
Yeah.
I think it's one of those things where so many people are on the side of it doesn't matter, whoever gets it first gets it. And it's like, well, that argument's kind of stupid, right? Like, you do want to see who can just get it down faster. And not to go too far down this rabbit hole, but when they announced that there was going to be a global release for this expansion, didn't you think that they were going to put everything at the same time?
I honestly didn't even think about that. The only thing I thought about is the servers literally catching fire at Blizzard's headquarters. Like, I thought that it would be possible, honestly. I didn't really think that it would be a massive disaster. And Blizzard, like, you look at, like, the Legion release, for example. The Legion release was amazing. It was perfect. There was nothing that went wrong at all, at least not on my server. And it was one of the cleanest releases that they had had. So I could very well expect to see this happen in the same way, right? Like, why would we not see that happening? And I think the reason why we just have the staggered raid releases is the fact that, there's so much of a time zone difference, and one day is one day here and it's another day over there. So it makes it a little bit more complex and harder for them to plan things out.
Yeah, I think that they're one of the things too is just it's tradition, and it lessens the load, right, of releasing everything all at once. Like, that is definitely a lot of problems that can happen across a lot of different servers. But obviously for the races, I would love even
it would be ideal. It would absolutely.
What if they put them on like I mean, this opens up a whole other can of worms, so we won't actually say it. But like, what if something like this was actually on the tournament realm for some of these top guilds? Just something to think about. But the other thing that we do need to think about
that would be really interesting.
Yeah, I think it could be interesting. We'll talk about it more off stream. It's probably not the best idea to try to figure it all out right now. But as we do see these Eldritch Abominations come out, this is a much cleaner attempt.
They pushed that to the limit. Those casts were like 0.1 second of going off. I actually thought that was about to be a wipe. Because if 2 of those casts go off, it almost wipes you in Heroic. In Mythic, everybody's dead. Guaranteed.
Limit, pushing it to the limit here. They're going to actually invest a battle res as well. I think it was Rogue that did drop down. Or maybe, no. They wouldn't have any melee here.
They actually do have one melee. I know, it's been surprised. He's been hiding on the damage meter, which I'm not surprised about with how OP Shadow Priests are and Warlocks are with multi-dotting. I'm actually amazed to see a melee character anywhere on the damage meter on this fight, and it's really impressive to see that.
He's assassination as well.
Yep.
So, obviously, this is something that we do need to note. It's funny to say that about rogues. Everybody knows how strong rogues are right now, especially when you watch the MDI. I think, like, if people could bring 8 rogues into their MDI team, they would bring 8 rogues into their MDI team. Like, it is the go-to class. What are some of the reasons that rogues are so strong? Well, their toolkit is going to have Shroud. That's one of the first things that you look at, because it is always going to be faster to just completely avoid a pack of mobs instead of having to take it down. Then on top of that, they're going to have so much utility. They're going to have so much damage. It's fantastic to bring them. But right now, when you look at Shadow Priest and what they're able to do on this boss fight, it is very clear that they are going to pull ahead in so many ways. And the question is, what do you think we see on the second boss?
I think that we'll probably see some DKs, assuming that you're able to grip in the ads and control the ads in that way. Other than that, I think you're probably going to see maybe the same comp. I don't really see a lot of instances where melee would actually be better than the casters. And I think that we could also probably see maybe even a similar thing. Yeah. Maybe a few more melee. I don't think melee would be as detrimental as they are now. And I think actually, if you're talking about being able to blow up the ads that spawn in phase 2, maybe you could absolutely see more melee, but it just depends on really what's available to them. I don't think that we'll see this same comp in the second boss fight. I don't think we'll even see anything close to it, to be honest. But it will be
nuts.
Yeah,
like,
it will be ranged.
Remember back in the day, like I feel like back in the day there was much more of a feeling, and I'm not sure if this was just like we were dumber as players or what
it was.
That
had a part to play.
I'm sure it did, right? I think that's always one of the things that I do try to think about. But we have those big classic brains that we can kind of talk to every now and then and try to get information from them. But back in the day, it was always like the trade-off. It always felt like, you brought as many melee as you could because they were going to be able to do so many different things, and if they could just stand still and wail on the boss, or not stand still, they could move around and still wail on the boss and be able to get a bunch of damage. But casters were able to do a whole different set of things. Right now it feels like there are just so many reasons that you don't bring melee.
There used to always be like kind of, I don't know, and maybe this was even stated by Blizzard that melee would melee would be able to do more damage in general than casters. And maybe this is just like my, selective remembering or whatever. But I do remember this kind of, that melee were almost expected to do more damage than casters if they had the same amount of uptime. And like here, actually, you know what? This could be a really good pull. Speaking of casters, the entire damage meter is all Shadow Priests. Wow.
Yeah. And that's like true damage meter too. You can see it. That's 1 through 8. It's not like one of those things bouncing up a player to make sure that they're on the damage meter, because you can do that for your add-ons to make sure that you're always one. If you are streaming, guys, I highly recommend that. If you ever do try streaming, make it so you're always set to number 1. But here we are going to see another Visage from Beyond. They're going to be racing just a little bit here. They're going to be able to get
perfect timing. They're going to be able to push that Visage immediately, and then after that, they're going to immediately push the 5th and also maybe the 6th empowered relic. So what's going to be really interesting here is if they're going to spawn another, okay, there's the second Visage, the second Visage right there. They have to kill that Visage, and we've already had 3 people go down, 5 people go down. That part is extremely difficult, and the reason for that is the way that debuff works whenever you have that 3rd relic empowered. It does a huge amount of damage that's pulsing to the entire raid, and on top of that, if a player goes below 25%, I think it's the same on Mythic, I'll have to go ahead and double check, it immediately kills the player.
It's tough. Those Sparky boys. Is it Storm Essence? Is that what it's called?
Yeah, it's 25%.
Yeah, so if the Storm Essence brings a player below 25% health, the player will instantly die via Annihilate, is how that does function. So yes, it is the Storm Essence. It's going to deal damage to the nearest player every 2 seconds. This thing is nuts. When we see that the ground lighting up, the Sparky boy there, we have just seen that.
That's whenever shit gets real. Like that is the point. Whenever the sparks go out and whenever they go into that last transition, that is whenever things get really, really, really serious. And if they can get through that, they have to do it one more time for the other boss. If they can get through those two, boss is dead, 100%. All they need to do is weather that storm.
Definitely, they need to weather that Storm Essence here. If they're able to do that, they take down this boss. They're right there. I think we see them consistently. One of the questions that you're going to see a lot if you've never watched a progression raid before, it's how much did that pool matter? I think it's a very important question to answer, especially for a longer raid. And we did it a lot when we watched Method racing in the last tier, when we watched them race for BOD. Now this time it's going to be Crucible of the Storm. And I think when you look at these pools, they're consistently getting to the place that they're roadblocked at. Yes, every now and then you're going to see a wipe happen very early, maybe even at 70% on both of these bosses.
Well, what they're doing, Rich, is as soon as they have one mistake happen, they probably just wipe it. As soon as you have one person die, they're like, okay, well, we'll try again next time, because they're confident in being able to get through the first 80% of the fight.
Exactly.
It's getting through that last roadblock. That's all that matters at this point. They get through that, they kill the boss. That's it. We get to watch the second boss, the last boss. And we are literally one pull away. And I think every single time they get to that phase or that part in the fight, they are learning a lot, because they know exactly the way their timings are working. They know everything. And I don't know, like, you could even see them. I don't think that we'll see this, but you can choose to do any of these relics in any order, which is one of the things that I think makes this fight so interesting, because I did want to talk about that too, is that you can choose to do the Sparkle relic first, or the Storm relic first. And I think obviously they're doing them based off of the order of their difficulty. So at the beginning, you're just doing the Shield relic, which is very, very easy to deal with. It just extends the duration of the fight, assuming that you can damage through the shield itself. But at the end there, I mean, it really goes down to the wire. And that's where you have to use personal cooldowns. You have to use whatever you can to stay alive. And
well, you basically, so when you look at something like relics, because they're so in your control, the way that you actually chart out a fight like this is you have a pretty good understanding, as we do see an early death coming out here. So either BR is going to come out. Yeah, there's the BR. Now they're going to keep on trucking forward. But the thing is you go, okay, this is about the time that each of these, oh, wow. So one of the things that I would actually like to show, I'm not sure if I have any of these right now. Josh has sent them to me in the past. Yeah. Basically, how we'll see these top guilds chart out a fight is they'll have a spreadsheet, and it will say time, and this is the assumed time of the fight. This is when these cooldowns are going to be traded. This is when this is going to happen. This is when this is going to happen. So when you have the relics like this, you go, okay, we're going to be using Lust at the beginning of the fight, which means we want to line up these relics. We're also going to be able to use these defensive cooldowns. We're going to hold on to these defensive cooldowns. They come in the next wave. And it really is very planned out. And the thing is when we already see them in this last phase, they're basically saying, do we have enough here? Do we need to hold something a little bit longer? Do we need to change anything else in those first phases? As of right now, we haven't seen any major changes come in. So they are convinced that they have the winning strategy to get through that final onslaught. That
I think that we might see a slight strategy change. I don't know what that's going to be. Okay. If anything, I don't know. I'm not really sure. I mean, if they use Lust at that point in the fight, I don't even know if that'll make a difference. I have no idea. But it could also be like just an individual personal responsibility thing where players are going to be saving their personal cooldowns for that point in the fight. And you could even go as far as to say that the reason that you're having people die this early in the fight is because they're saving their cooldowns for that point in the fight whenever it really matters. Because they might think that if we can get to that phase, we can get to that point with everybody alive and all the cooldowns up, it's a kill. And that's basically all they're doing, is they're playing for luck and just to make sure that nobody makes a mistake, because that's ultimately what it is. You're basically doing these boss attempts over and over and over until everybody does it right.
Yep. I definitely think that the other thing that you kind of do look at with that lust. So using the lust here, you're basically saying this is when we need to just be pumping out the most damage, right? And what could potentially do that? You look at some of these bubbles that do actually come out, and I think it does make you feel a lot safer. So I think that lust timing isn't going to change because they have so much control as to what that lust is going to be getting damage into. I don't think that that's going to be the tuning knob to be adjusted.
And also, if you're popping heroism at the beginning, you're going to have the most damage because that's whenever everyone's cooldown's up. That's whenever everybody has their potion up, from pre-potting. That's everything happening all at the same time. So if you're talking about damage efficiency, doing it at the beginning is obviously the smartest thing to do. And as you can see, I mean, they're already already pushed the first relic, interrupting Eldritch Abominations. And again, it's just that's another example of what we were talking about earlier with like player communication, knowing which ones to interrupt and which ones not to interrupt. Because again, even on heroic, that's a wipe if you do it wrong. And just knowing and being able to make those agile decisions is, I think, one of the things that Blizzard has been using to separate heroic guilds from mythic guilds.
Yep. And I do feel like right now, every time that we've seen them make it through the abominations without having any round, they have been able to push pretty far into the fight. I feel like we see a little bit of a cool off period here now as they move into that first visage. And right now you can see it casting that terrifying echo, and they should be able to bring it down without too much of a problem.
Oh yeah, that one's gonna die. That one's gonna die early. Honestly, they killed that with more than a second to spare. And I know that might not sound like a lot, but whenever you're doing fights like this, a second is a lot of time, and they're just trying their best to maximize the damage on both of these ads and just get into that third relic phase without having any sort of like problems at all. And the movement that you have to do here is also like pretty extensive. There's a lot of like void zones that you need to move out of. You need to move together. You need to move out of the raid. This is actually a very, very high movement fight whenever you can combine all of those things together.
And we actually see that when it starts to get hairier towards the end as well, that movement actually does become a problem when you wouldn't even expect it to. Some of these mechanics that seem very easy right now when they're somewhat isolated, all of a sudden become one of the most difficult things to actually deal with. And we are going to see another visage coming up here, and you can see starting to change their targeting onto it right now as that terrifying echo does get casted out again. Also abominations to be dealing with. It looks like the visage going to be going down without a problem. They're going to keep that nice and low with dot, so it can't cast that fear anymore.
Well, they lost somebody. They lost a demon hunter, I believe.
We've seen that demon hunter go down a few times. I'm trying to see who it actually is, if it is one of the tanks or not. It's a little bit tricky to get used to some of the players' UIs every now and then. But we have seen that.
This might be a white. Yep, there it is. It's over. It was a good try.
People are saying it's max.
Yeah.
So oh yeah, it is. It's actually really tricky to like go in there and see the names, but yeah, we're just kind of keeping an eye on that. Obviously, a lot of damage going out onto him. We've seen him go down a few times, and then also you kind of do assume he's raid leading, which can be an even more.
That's always my excuse whenever I do something wrong, is I'm raid leading. Yeah, so I understand that very well.
It's a good excuse.
Hey, whatever works.
I was just testing to see if we could stand in that a little bit longer, get some more damage out.
Yeah, I'm just doing some testing for the guild. And again, like a lot of these things, I'm pretty sure they're probably just waiting for everything just to go right and just get back to that point in the fight and be able to just push through. And honestly, I think that they're probably going to be able to kill it. And I mean, I think they're one good pull away of killing it. Maybe two.
I think that they've been in that scenario, like you said, where they're one good pull away for quite some time, and that's an exciting thing to see. And I see a lot of people in chat too, just kind of trying to double check who we're watching right now. So this is Limit. This is a guild that has consistently been racing throughout the recent tiers against Method.
Well, they've stepped it up too. Like every single tier, Limit has been. I guess on Gahoon they were extremely competitive, and we had this discussion on Allcraft where if Limit hadn't done the extend and they had re-cleared, we could have actually seen Limit get the world first on Old Deer. And obviously on Jaina they were much farther behind than they were with Old Deer, but every single tier they're trying to redeem themselves. Go ahead.
I'm gonna challenge that. Obviously world third because Method's able to grab world first and world second, but I do think that the crazy thing about how Jaina did shape up, I feel like Limit I feel like they almost won. I feel like there was a world where they made one different decision into what their strategy is and they win. But what happened was they choose on a strategy, then they gear according to it, and they very much find themselves locked into that strategy. And if it sounds like just pick the winning strategy, forehead, but they found themselves in a scenario where they were backed into a corner. They had already made their bed and they had to lie in it. If they had, and it's a ballsy move, if they had pulled the trigger on the right strategy, they win easily. I think that that's the right play, to take a risk and say, okay, this is a strategy that is going to be able to take the boss down. Then ultimately we do see Mythic come in. All of a sudden they're just a bunch of trolls. They're going to have that nice voodoo shuffle, which is going to help them out quite a bit based off the stacks. And they're also going to be able to have the berserking as well, which is really good because you're not going to be able to actually have lust used in the same capacity based off the Jaina fight. So many things went into who managed to get that down first, and I think Limit was closer than you give them credit for when you see, Mythic clear it again.
Well, they put up a great fight, and I think that's really the main thing, is that it would be kind of boring if it was a one-horse race. I think that, like, back in the day, whenever you had guilds like Paragon, Exorcist, Method, and even, like, before that, like Blood Legion and all of these guilds competing against each other, there have been plenty of times where it was a shakeup, and a guild that you didn't expect to get the world first got it. I think probably Spine of Deathwing was an example of that, when I believe Stars got the world first Spine of Deathwing. And or there was at least some sort of Asian guild that got Spine of Deathwing first, and that happened again with Yogg. Usually you do have the traditional guilds get it, but the more people that are in the race competing, I think it makes the race more interesting, and I think that's also better for PvE as a whole, because whenever people see the amount of excitement that people have for this type of content, I believe that probably makes them a little bit more interested in trying it out themselves and being part of the community in that way. And I think it's just an overall positive, the more people that are competing in the race. And that's why I was saying before, I'm really glad to see Limit actually streaming their progression this time, because that's something that people can literally see which boss is closer, why are they closer, and what's different. And I think in BOD, that's something that we missed out on, and it's great to see that it's happening now.
I seriously, there were moments too where I thought it wasn't even going to be Method or Limit who won with the race. It was so crazy to see some of these guilds that we didn't expect just shooting up on those leaderboards nice and early. It was a pretty exciting race. I do think BOD overall was a really exciting race. Now, Crucible of Storms, as much as we've been saying all the things that we do like about it, I think one of the added excitement is going to be the fact that we haven't really seen a raid like this before. I mean, nobody knows how long the event is really going to go on. I know that like even talking to Method about different things with how long they expect it to go, they're like up to 4 days maybe. It's like one of those things where you have to plan for it to go long. You have to plan for it to go long. Do they actually think it's going to take that long? I don't think so. I think most people assume that Limit's potentially going to take it down before we even see Method get started. I think that that's probably the most common assumption that we see amongst people. I don't know, chat. Do you think that we actually do see Limit take this down before Method even logs on to servers?
Yeah, I'm actually curious. Like, let's Limit or Method, boys, in chat. Who do you think is going to kill it first? Limit or Method?
People are just like, nope.
Yeah, no.
So, because I think the first thing that I asked,
Method is by far the crowd favorite. I mean, if Limit has, this is their race to lose, right? Because there's the largest period of time. The race is the shortest, and the shorter the race is, comparatively, the larger the gain will be for them having the head start of being in an A, right? So this is the best chance they have to go for a world first. And if they do, I mean, you saw like how successful Method's world first races were and have been. And obviously, Limit and these other guilds are going to try to emulate that to have some of that success for themselves. And there's a lot on the line for them to do this right. They have to establish themselves as a big guild. If Limit gets a world first, that would be huge. It'll be like a massive big deal. And it would also, the thing is that then people will, again, like what we were talking about before, like, oh, well, who actually got it because, they started earlier, etc. But I do think that it makes things very, very interesting whenever you have, like, both of these different guilds competing and, you don't really know who's going to win. if I had to bet, like, I don't know. Like, I genuinely don't know who's going to win this race because we haven't seen what the second boss is like. What if the second boss is undertuned and they kill him in 50 attempts?
Right.
Like, that could completely happen. What if he's overtuned
you
and it takes 2 weeks? Like, hell yeah.
That'd be awesome.
Who knows?
That'd be awesome. Hey, definitely give us all something to do over the next couple days, right?
Yeah.
I do think right now, when you look at Limit 2, I think that one of the things that we really have seen from them in the past 2 raid tiers is them being very good on the first day at sprinting. Like, they know that they have that little bit of an advantage starting in NA, and they use the heck out of it. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see that here as well with this tier, because I think that they have that mentality that you said a little bit earlier. It's their race to throw. They have pretty much every advantage.
This is theirs to lose. Like, this.
Think about
this is
how
all
much faster. Think about how much faster they actually went in BOD than Method did at the beginning. Like, Method
they
won.
were extremely efficient.
Yeah, I mean, you look at those first bosses, even all the way up to, right before Jaina. Like, they curb stomped those early bosses.
Well,
but
and then also you combine that
with
with the fact that, like, Method really kind of ran into a roadblock on Mechatork. Like, that took them a little bit longer to kill it. Yeah, and I remember whenever they killed that boss, a lot of them were just like, thank God. I remember that pretty clearly.
Everybody was like really scared about Siege because of what was being said in North America about Siege. And then I feel like Method managed to get Siege down like a lot quicker than was expected. Blockade, yeah, sorry. Yeah, been a little while. It's like 1 month and I forget everything. But Blockade was one of those fights where I think Limit had to come up with a very interesting strategy. That was the one that slowed them down just a little bit. And then all of the sudden, Method was able to have it. They had a different roadblock, but when they actually did get to Blockade, they went through it a little bit quicker. Now, taking a look at the fight here, this is one of those areas where we start to see a little bit a surge of panic sometimes, but these Eldritch Abominations were dealt with relatively easily. We don't see anybody going down here. So that is a good sign moving forward in this fight. I think the next thing that we're going to be looking at for here that could be potentially dangerous is going to be that Visage.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the Visage is really that's the limiting factor at the end of the fight. I feel like that's really where they're falling short, is they were killing that first Visage, and then immediately after they get the Relic, they get the second Visage, and then having them happen one after another like that was just a little bit too much damage. I think we're probably going to see a wipe here. There's people that are really, really low. Like, if they're able to recover this, that's going to be very impressive. And let's see, there's one person. He died in the Shaman Res Totem. So that was really, really good. Everybody somehow survived that. That was so close, man. They had to tighten that up. Oh my God.
That has become one of these crazy skill things that we see from shamans time and time again. It was actually something on Jaina where we saw that res totem coming out, going to be able to keep people up, and all of a sudden that just bought them.
That gave them an extra battle res.
It gives them an extra battle res, but also on top of that, like, it makes this pool where they're already 50% into it a valid pool. It could be a kill attempt here.
Yeah, this could actually be like, I mean, yeah, this could be it, boys. I mean, they haven't really. I don't think they needed to use a battle res. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but they didn't need to use one with the Demon Hunter, and so they're just going into it. Let's see. They're about to push Fathul into. This is going to be the third relic phase, so they have to get through this one and 3 more after this. Another Visage goes out. Obviously, they're taking this really seriously. That Visage gets deleted. Eldritch Abominations go out. They've got to keep the interrupts on those. I don't think we're probably going to see a wipe on the Eldritch Abominations. With a guild that's at this high of a level, you're probably never going to have a mistake in coordination and communication on that level. But that could... Hey, it's the way it goes. Sometimes you get it. Sometimes you get got.
Oh,
all right. It's the way it goes. Hey, sometimes you see fumbles in the Super Bowl. Okay.
Yeah. So what were we talking?
It's about high-end guilds not making mistakes.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, excellent coordination and like not doing anything wrong. Yeah, of course.
So to bounce off of what Asmongold was saying, it wasn't the Eldritch Abominations per se that caused that. I think that
I think it was a
the
debuff,
Eldritch
right?
Abominations, they're like a bookmark in this fight, and the book that they're marking is the book of overlapping. When we see those Eldritch Abominations come out,
Yeah.
it is just an indicator that a lot of mechanics are going down. So Asmongold was definitely
yeah, it's more of a
not wrong.
multitasking requirement. I think that's it. Like, I didn't look. That's the way. Like, it goes sometimes. Right. I don't know what else to say.
I got your back, dude.
Yeah,
I just said something so confusing and meaningless that now everybody's trying to figure out what the fuck I just said,
Well,
and not
good.
the fact
Then
that you were just completely wrong.
Yeah, distracts from that fact. So I'm completely okay.
Yeah, I said 8 words that made no sense together, and we'll just let everybody try to figure that out. But very
That's a good
quickly,
start.
as the good guilds do, they're gonna get back on the horse. We're gonna get another poll going on here.
I think that's another thing, man, is like, I know for me, I get tilted so easy. I get mad just in the slightest thing. And to see these guilds have some dumb ass shit happen, they have a perfect pull, they use the Shaman Ankh Totem, everything is going fine, and then the raid just gets deleted. And the fact that they can come back 30 seconds later, do it again. That's impressive. And being able to do that, this is one of the things, is like, you think about NASCAR, for example. Like, it's not hard really to drive the car around the track once, but they're doing it 500 times. Mythic rating is the same thing. It's easy to do it right once, but to keep the level of focus and concentration for hours, days, some raids weeks.
It's easy for them to do it once, right? It's easy for them to do it once. I think for NASCAR, they're still driving like 500 miles an hour. I don't think like all of us could do that turn, but for them,
well, that's why we have
turn is
racing
second
chairs,
nature.
you know, the gaming racing chairs. Well, at least most people do. I don't.
To go fast.
Yeah, I mean, why else would you have a racing chair for gaming? So you can go fast.
So you can go fast. But here we are going to see, like you said, a level of focus that needs to happen. And I have to bring this up because I'm curious what you think about it. As much as it's their race to throw, like, imagine if Limit doesn't fucking win. Like, how would that feel? If you're North America,
I don't know. Ask them how they felt in BOD and Old Deer. I mean, like, this is going to be. It will be much more of a crushing defeat because obviously, comparatively, they're going to have a larger advantage. But I think that it's okay. If they lose, most people are expecting them to lose. Method has a much longer track record of being a high-end guild that's extremely focused on getting world first. They have a whole infrastructure built up around it. They are an esports organization. They have a lot of tools that Limit doesn't have. And their players are motivated probably at least as much, right? But they're also being able to be part of an organization like that gives them certain things that they can do and more time that they can focus and do things. And also, it's just the pure fact that they have more experience doing this kind of stuff. In terms of like getting these world firsts.
I see Deep Shades right now,
What?
like in chat, and you know.
I still need to read his Reddit post. Yeah,
I actually didn't get to read it yet either. He sent it to me, and I just didn't get a chance to read it. We should read that on Allcraft on Thursday.
That'd be good.
I've heard fantastic things about it. Yeah, I definitely think we should give that a look. But I think when we do actually see like something like Deep Shades in here, what is happening right now when you talk about that preparation that's going on for Method? I mean, they basically go like, okay, is the strategy working? Are we going to use this tomorrow? Like,
that is an advantage that Method does have, is that they're getting to see, like, basically, as usual, NA is beta testing the raids. And they're also, this time around, beta testing the strategies too. So Method is going to wake up and they're going to be like, okay, well, what did Limit do? All right, let's do that. And so all of this guesswork that Limit has to go through right now, Method isn't going to have to deal with.
Yeah, it's like the disadvantages are obviously starting a day late. The advantage is once you do start that day late, other people had their attempts on the boss already. You got more data to operate off of, and Deep Shades popping in here. If they weren't sure that they were going to use all Shadow Priests before, after they look at this damage meter, maybe they're saying, hey,
maybe we should use all Shadow Priests.
Josh, could you roll Shadow real quick? You know,
Yeah.
like different things like that going on. I think one of the biggest things too, so much time is spent trying to determine how many healers you need to use. That's not something that we've talked about much today because on this boss, I don't think we've seen that getting adjusted too many times here. But we see such a large focus on, can we cut a healer? Can we get by with it? Can we go down to 3? And that is something that consistently is being changed, usually after breaks. If there's a break, usually you come back and you try
change up the comp a little bit and just try a few different things. Like that's one thing I would be so stressed out as being a healer. Like imagine if you're healing it and you're like barely getting by with 4 and they're like, hey, we're going down to 3. It's just like, oh no. It's like having a job and your boss is like constantly firing everybody else around you, but you have to pick up their work too. God, it would just be the worst thing. Like I never envy healers in raids. Healing is the hardest job to do in a raid, in my opinion, because every raid for a healer is like doing a Mythic Plus, except for the affixes or the players that you're playing with, right? You have the fire affix where you have Billy that stands in the fire, and you know the AFK affix where they're killing the boss too slow, and you know all of these different things. You know, oh wow, this boss is raging because the tank for some reason turned around. And yeah, healing I think is very, very difficult and probably the hardest job in raids, and from my perspective at least.
You know, I can say from the other side of things, you know, you're talking about like that difficulty too. Like if somebody gets fired and then you have to pick up their work. As somebody who gets fired, that's got to be kind of nice, right? I've enjoyed it so far.
I'll see you guys later.
You just get to
hit me
kick
up
back
whenever the boss is
watch
dead.
Everything unfold.
Yeah,
you still get the world first if they get it.
Yep, that's right. I know. I used to love that. Like I would just get sat in raids and I'd be like, okay, yo, guys, let me know whenever it's dead. I'll come in next week and get the loot, okay? I really need that helmet. So, all right, peace. Like, that was great, dude. Like, I used to love that about raiding.
Yeah, you know, you get to catch up on your alts. You get to catch up on the animes that you're watching. Then you come back.
So,
have you seen
that Xalatath, the not the anime part? Have you seen that Xalatath is actually in the boss room for the second boss for Unat?
Wait,
he's right
really?
under. Yeah, he's right underneath him. And it's very easy to tell whenever he does he's like charging up in between the phases. The Xalatath is right underneath him. I didn't even really believe it until I actually looked at it and I saw it myself. So
Wait, I gotta grab my dog. He's super pissed off right now.
Go for it. I'm actually like, I think that we might actually see a Void expansion next, or at least like, okay, so the next, wait, you don't think so?
No, I think, okay. Remember back, I feel like this is the Void expansion. I feel like we're just getting to that part.
So
I feel
it's two
like
expansions in one. It's like it's kind of funny though, because I talked about this about Cataclysm. The expansion is following the exact same formula as Cataclysm.
This is like, oh, so this is the Old Gods expansion. Maybe we go into the Void in the next one. That would actually be sweet.
Well, you see N'Zoth
for the next expansion.
Well, you genuinely see N'Zoth in the last fight, so I think that would be completely possible. Like you could go into the Void, or I think that something cataclysmic is going to happen at the end of the expansion, because I feel like Blizzard at this point, they've released so many expansions that they need to do something that really just kind of breaks the mold. So I would be really surprised if
someone in chat just goes, the Void isn't even a place. The Void is nothing. I still think it would be cool to go there. Obviously, some of this stuff fell out from the Void and like leaked over.
Well, they can just do what they did with everything else. They just retcon it.
Yeah, right. Well, they already retconned the Void. The Void didn't even exist.
Yeah, just retcon it. Like, yeah.
Chris Metzen was just like, hey, I'm going to change everything and then I'm done. And I was like, okay, we'll run with it. So sorry that we offended you, sir, by saying that the Void existed. But yeah, I think that would actually be really awesome if we like went into outer space and just got to fight some tentacles. I think that'd be super cute.
That'd be awesome.
I like that a lot. Yeah.
I would prefer a Scourge expansion. Like, I don't care if they have to use a plot device to make it happen. I would love to see a Scourge expansion.
Do that the next time we come back, and then all of a sudden the Scourge is all over the place.
Hey, the Lich King got out again. Oh, damn it. Okay, well, we've got to deal with him again. Yeah,
Blizzard, are you listening right now?
Yeah,
so next expansion, we go into the Void, and maybe get rid of Azurite gear. That might help. Then, oh man, that's a perfect device to get rid of Azurite gear. Like, Azurite gear can't go into space for some reason, so we have to leave it behind.
Oh, yeah. Of course, because there's no gravity and it's powered by gravity. I think that's a great idea.
There we go. So you got to leave your Azurite gear behind. We're in space. then Heart of Azeroth, all that shit's left behind. You get back, and the Scourge has taken over, and what's his face?
I actually thought this would be a good idea, right? And we can talk about this a little bit more, because obviously this is just kind of they're going through the same thing again. I always thought it would be interesting if after Argus, because time passes differently in like the other planets, we would go to Argus or something like that, and then come back, and the entire world will have changed because maybe 200 or like 100 years will have passed. So you just go immediately from, you know, Anduin being 12 years old to Anduin being like 82 or something. I feel like that would be really interesting, and it would allow them to kind of like revamp everything. The only problem with that is then you could run into the same issue that we had with Cataclysm, and because people are so attached to the zones, it could also create a lot of problems too. So
you know, the best
I don't
thing
know
about
what the best
that?
option would be.
You get back, and she's 200 years older, but Sylvanas is still hot.
Yes, dude. Well, no, that won't happen because we're gonna kill her at the end of the expansion. Remember?
Oh,
Yeah,
we weren't supposed to tell them that, though.
Yeah. Well, it's okay. We'll just. I'll delete that out of the VOD. But
she'll
yeah.
definitely live long enough to be a gilf.
Of course. I think that isn't she already like 3,000 years old or something? Or is that?
That's hot.
Oh, somebody just got hit by that. That is not good. We already saw one player going down. They're getting battle rezzed up, so that's at least good. The fight is still going on. I mean, they're halfway through the fight right now. So all they need to do is hold it together here, and we could actually see them get to that same point and see if they'll be able to overcome it. Abominations come out. They're multi-dying the Visage. Zaljax is going to have to go under 50%, and then they're going to be able to do the fourth relic here, and that's going to be happening probably in like less than a minute.
And this kind of goes back to what we said on that kind of, it was obviously a funny way, but when you do see these abominations come out, this is one of those waves where there are scary overlaps. And that really is the thing that makes top end rating so difficult, is not only going to be those mechanics that you deal with. Any of the mechanics in and of themselves by themselves are relatively easy to deal with. You're usually moving to the side or just damaging something, right? But when you have to deal with everything at once, that's when it does get scary. When you need to be moving, you need to be doing
the multitasking is always where things fall apart. I mean, I'll be the first to admit I am not a god at multitasking. I'm very weak at multitasking, and so like whenever I see the Visage going out, and then you've got to break down the shield that just spawned, and the shield just spawned on top of the Visage, this is really, really bad for them. I don't know if this is going to happen or not. The Visage is that's a fear.
Yeah, this is a wipe
That's
for sure.
That's a fear.
I feel like you're actually a fantastic multitasker though. I'm like thinking of scenarios where I can actually prove that right now, but I feel like you're a fantastic multitasker.
I don't know about that. Maybe it's because I'm trying to do too many things at the same time.
Half the time during Allcraft, you're like playing like Dark Souls. Like I feel
well, there was a couple of times, yeah. I was playing a game while we were doing Allcraft, and I died, and like I was like, and then people thought it was because you said something. I thought that was pretty funny.
Yeah. But I can always like it's pretty obvious on Discord. I'm not sure if it comes through on Twitch, but I can like see the game in your eyes. You know how like you can see like the game always like reflected in someone's eyes? It's like, oh wait.
Yeah, that's how it was. I was doing that a lot. I've kind of focused on the show recently.
Wait, why do the Kappas have rainbows on them? Right now in chat. What are they saying?
Oh, I could see it in your eyes.
Oh, I get it.
Yeah,
I get it. So first I say something about Sylvanas that's a little bit off color, and then all of a sudden they think that.
Now you say something that's all colors.
All right, we're gonna get in here for another attempt. I think that we've seen, all in all, right now, a little bit of a slide down the progression ladder. We've seen a lot of those wipes coming in around that 50% mark, which we didn't really expect, consistently getting to that 30% mark so many times before. And that is just going to show how much difficulty there is in this encounter.
Oh, dude. I mean, like, how many times have you been in, like, a raid or something like that, and you have one good pull, and then you spend 2 more hours wiping in the first 3 minutes? And it's just, like, the one time. I remember on, like, Heroic Ragnaros, every night we would get 1 pull into phase 4, And all the rest of the time, you'd have people getting hit by magma traps, people getting hit by fire, people just doing World in Flames wrong. It was the worst thing ever. So this is, again, like what I was going back to before, is like having that mental control and not getting tilted. And you can see, like, I mean, there's nobody in this raid right now that's not thinking, why the fuck are we wiping? We've gotten this far before. And they're frustrated. This is like, that's part of it.
Well,
like,
look how frustrated they are getting up out of the chair right now. You got 18 geared out Shadow Priest wearing 420 gear.
Yep.
Just trying to beat down these tentacles.
And it's like, you look at this, like, the damage is insane. Like, yeah, they have a damage buff, etc., but the damage is still ridiculous. Like, they're popping off. And they're actually doing this fight pretty quickly whenever you think about it. I think this is about as fast as we cleared normal mode even. This is absolutely a longer fight. Like, the more that we do this fight and the more that we see it, the more I just cannot wait to see the second boss, man. I cannot wait. I really hope they kill it soon, just so I can start seeing that second boss on Mythic. I want to see some old god influences, some tentacles popping up out of the ground, all kinds of crazy stuff. I've got very, very high expectations for it.
Yep. I think that, I expected this boss to go down a little bit quicker. So I can't imagine how difficult it's going to be for the second boss. I think that's one of the big notes that we have to make. And we also have to ask the question, how long do you think that these guys can go? I don't think that they're necessarily
It'll be a 16-hour raid.
At least. If I'm Limit, I sit down and say, like, we go until somebody falls asleep. Because this is a tier that they need to win, in my opinion. I think that right now, if you like raid racing, even if you are a Method fan, you're kind of maybe cheering for Limit a little bit this time around, you want to keep it competitive. As somebody who's not necessarily a fan of anybody, who's just a fan of the race overall, this is one of those times where it's really easy to cheer for Limit. You want to see everything stay competitive. They have a huge advantage. It's only 2 bosses. But at the same time, imagine if we did have this just go on for like 4 days.
Oh, that'd be really funny. Exciting. Like, imagine if the boss is like super hard and it takes like 2 weeks. Like, I can only imagine. That'd be so funny to me if it ended up taking like 2 weeks to kill the boss. And is it 74 wipes? Yeah. What is their wipe count right now? I actually don't even know.
I saw at some point they got to the 69 wipe mark and everybody was
okay. So they're like 74 or something like that. Okay.
Yeah.
So over 70 wipes on the first boss. That's insane. Like, I really hope that, like, Blizzard sees this. Like, is this too hard? I think this is a really interesting question, right? Because if Limit, a guild like this, is having so much trouble on it, some of the highest end players in the game, and then on top of that, they're class stacking, and we can't necessarily expect these other guilds to be able to come in here and emulate that with more gear, because there isn't going to be any more gear. They're already geared out. Every other, guild that's killed Mythic Jaina is probably relatively the same gear. I mean, obviously these guilds are probably maybe 1 or 2 item levels higher, but not enough for it really to make a difference. So I'm really curious to see what's going to happen, what Blizzard's response is going to be to the difficulty of this raid, because honestly, I think it's really hard.
Yeah, at the end of the day, it doesn't get higher than 420. That is going to be the cap for this gear. 420 is the number that you need to have scorched into your mind. We're going to see that Lust get popped here yet again, nice and early. We've seen them do this time and time again. We don't really expect any problems to happen until maybe that 50% mark. But if they do have even a death here, I think something that Asmon has pointed out, if it's not something that you can just bandage, whether it is catching it early with the shaman, or if it is going to be a battle res, we expect a stack and die to try to keep these pools as lean as possible and to get into that scenario where everything does line up and you're actually able to push for a kill attempt.
Oh yeah, I mean, obviously all of this is basically waiting for the right timings to happen at the right time. The last wipe that we had was just purely a bad timing issue. The ad came up at the same time the shield went up, and they had to break the shield and damage down the ad. The same shield that you're seeing going up right now, that happened at the exact same time as that ad.
Max once again gonna get bopped in the face there. They're gonna be able to pull him up. That's gonna be one battle res out of their pockets. Moving forward here, that's not something that you want to see. That basically mentioned 2 seconds ago that was the opposite of what they wanted to happen. That's going to be quite a bit of utility out of the way, and time again.
Oh yeah, and they had to use a battle res there. That wasn't a shaman totem or a free res or anything. So they had to do that, and that's the way it goes. Like, I'm not sure specifically what their strategy is, but it is always like really demoralizing whenever you see someone die that early on in the fight.
Yeah, and you can see right here in chat. Every now and then I like to check into chat to see the strategies, and we have some of the great minds of World of Warcraft watch with us. Everybody, thanks for hanging out and watching this with me and Asmon right now. Obviously, this is Limit trying to push forward here, but McConnell, one of those great minds of World of Warcraft, he says kick Max, bring Swifty. I think that's definitely an interesting way.
That's a big true.
Yeah. So we got some truers in the chat.
Yeah, dude. I'm sure we got some truers in the chat. I mean, you get the Arms Warrior, the sweeping strikes. I mean, these bosses are going to be dead. I've seen other people, well, why don't they just kill one then the other? You know, there's a lot of ideas people have about the fights, guys. I mean, I do.
Wait.
Go ahead.
Classic comes out and Swifty just starts pulling everyone apart like soft bread. It's going to be so fantastic. I just can't wait for Swifty to one-shot me. I've been waiting so long, and it's finally almost here. Classic this summer. Swifty going to decimate all of us.
It's Fury, too. I'm very much looking forward to that. I'm actually curious to see how these guilds are going to approach Classic, if any of them are actually going to take Classic seriously. I feel like you'll probably see a lot of these like guilds, limits and methods that will have alts on Classic and probably log on.
Well, you know who's staying with us, right?
Do what?
You know who's staying with us, right? Wait,
I'm not sure yet.
Can I say this? Is that fun in chat? I might say something that I'm not supposed to say.
Is it who I think it is?
Yeah.
Oh, shit.
Yeah.
Wow.
I think that's happening.
Okay, we'll see.
People in chat are saying it already.
Yeah, we'll definitely
Wait, that's fine. Can I say it? Well, obviously, guys, I think a lot of you know, Esfa and Stay Safe, Asmon, and myself are all going to have House for Classic, where we just completely no-life the game and go ham. He said say it. So, and I know that Method Josh is planning on staying with us as well for Classic to actually progress forward. So I know that a lot of these players, even if it's not necessarily with their guild.
Powers combined.
Exactly. So we're going to be playing with a lot of these guys. I know that we're really excited. We're going to bring Josh over to America and just show him what freedom tastes like.
Show him how to eat a hamburger like a real man. Take him over to Whataburger. You know.
Well, he's from White Castle, actually.
Like a White Castle?
Yeah, you didn't know? Josh is from White Castle. This is not a joke. Yeah, Josh is actually from White Castle.
Like, this isn't like a joke because, like, Europeans have castles over there, right? This is actually like a castle.
Oh, he's from Newcastle. Oh, no, I made the fucking dumbest burger joke ever.
Hey.
And he's from Newcastle. I thought he was actually White Castle. I'm just a fucking idiot. Oh, my God.
Well, whatever.
But, hey, at least I didn't just wipe in the raid. I feel a little bit better right now.
Yeah, let's focus on the raid here and how they wipe. Man, that sucks. Jeez. Another one, huh? Well, they'll get it this time for sure.
Yikes, man. Yikes. Oh, dude, I actually thought Josh was from a place called White Castle.
Wait, I just realized something. Is this room here the same room that we fight the last boss in Shrine at?
The last boss in Shrine.
Whenever you go down the water, and then there's the eels, and it's the same room. I didn't even notice that.
But you come in from a different side.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
The water that's on the far side of the stream is where.
Dude, that is so cool.
That's really fucking
cool.
Like,
I really like that. I really love whenever, like, I love whenever outdoor areas become raids in the same way that you had like the Firelands and then also Heimal. I love that so much. And another thing that I really like is whenever you see dungeons and raids kind of intertwining. I think it just makes the game much more interesting. And
well, it makes the places feel like they actually matter. It makes the world feel really.
It makes it feel like
really
a world,
real.
Right? Rather than just like different dungeons.
I love watching chat react to something like that.
Yeah.
Like you notice something and you're genuinely excited about it, and then there's like 4 people who are like, yeah, of course it took you that long to fucking notice that, you fucking idiot. Then there's like the one guy like, recycled content, Omega lol, dead game.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like nobody can just be happy.
No, being happy is not allowed. Okay, if you're having fun, you're doing it wrong.
Recycled content.
Yeah, I mean, because let's be honest. I mean, this fight isn't as hard as anything in Classic. I mean, if you brought in, Classic players and You just put them in front of this fight. I mean, they'd already be done with the second boss. Like,
Well,
it'd
that's
just
why
be that
Esfon's
easy.
in chat. That's why
Hey,
Esfon's in
dude.
chat.
Yeah,
He
there
already
it
took
is.
it down. Probably by him fuck himself.
Yeah.
Him and McConnell just went in and
Yeah, just bubble and just kill the boss. It's easy.
That's why they're all playing Shadow Priest, because they can't figure out how to play Ret.
Yeah.
They're like, oh man, that's way too hard. We don't have the vanilla brain.
Yeah, exactly. I do think that it's like Red is one of those classes that you can play with a garage door opener. I mean, really, it's just like one button.
I'm thinking about it.
I mean, really, I mean, it's just one button. You smack everything together and.
Yeah, I'm trying to think about. I've actually never seen a garage door remote. I'm assuming they have more buttons than you would actually need. To
No, they have one
Paladin.
button, which is still more
really?
than what you'd need for a Ret Paladin in vanilla because you just auto attack and go AFK.
Don't they have like an up, a down, like a siren maybe?
Oh, not my dad's. It's just a one button. You just hit the one button. My dad's got trouble figuring out how to use his remote. He thinks a computer monitor is a computer. Okay, one button is more than enough.
A lot of people are saying that theirs have 3 buttons and things like that.
Too many buttons, boys. We got some rich people in chat, apparently. That's fine, guys. It's fine.
People with cars.
Yeah, people with cars.
Upper class garage doors.
Upper
rich.
class. Yeah, dude. Garage door opener
I don't even know how to
privilege.
drive. I actually don't even know how to drive.
Wait,
That's
what?
like the.
Really?
Yeah, I told you that this.
I
that's why
thought no, I
technically
thought
that'd
you
be
were
really
able
weird.
to drive, but you just haven't for a long time.
I mean, legally, I'm not allowed to drive anymore. It's
Did
like
you have a
been that
license
long.
before?
Yeah, I had a license.
Okay,
at
so
one
it's the
point
same
in
as
my
me,
life.
dude. I was driving. I drove legally for like 3 years because I didn't have. They sent me a renewal notice and it was $20. I didn't have $20 at the time, so I was like, you know, it's a driver's license. What are they gonna do? And yeah, it was the same thing. Like, I did get in trouble for it, and I had to go and like retake the test and everything. Like, it's not even like I had to do everything all over again and take a driving test like a 15-year-old. It was humiliating a little bit. So
You have to put this
don't worry. Yeah.
Tag on the back of your car.
Oh yeah, and they had to teach me. Oh, I actually learned for the first time how to parallel park at age 27, which I've never used before and I've already forgotten.
I mean, I wonder how many other Lamborghini owners have a similar experience to that. Like, I feel like you're one of the only Lamborghini owners that ever was in a situation where he's like, yeah, I just can't renew my license. It's too expensive. I spent all the money on all these Lambos.
Well, how do you think I afforded the Lamborghini? I don't have money to pay for, you know, a renewal or anything like that. I've got to keep paying for the Lamborghini. Come on.
Exactly. I mean, every
that's
dollar, guys.
Yeah, dude, those payments.
every
Yeah,
dollar
all of
counts.
your money goes towards my Lamborghinis. Okay.
Well, that's the thing is, though, is when you actually do like look at it, you know, think about what you could accomplish in your life where if you just cut down, you only eat Taco Bell, right? You're saving money now on food. You save the $20 on stupid little things like bills and things like that. All of a sudden, you're in a Lamborghini. And now we're at a point, you know, we talk about the remote control that we're going to have to use for our driveway in our classic house. And it's going to have like 30 buttons because of all the Lamborghinis that we got.
Well, it's going to have 30 buttons because we're going to have a 30-car garage.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. With all Lamborghinis in it. It'll be easy.
And like half of us can't even legally drive.
Yeah.
We just,
I would be worried about like driving a Lamborghini though. Like before we get too into the fight, I just want to say one more thing is I would be worried about driving around in a Lamborghini because like all the time there'd just be like so much anxiety. Like, oh, somebody's going to open their car door into your car. Somebody's going to key your car. People are going to stand on your car. They're going to sit next to your car. They're going to try to get in a wreck with you to try to file some sort of a lawsuit. Like there's a million things wrong. Like I have genuinely no problem driving around my shitty ass car and I feel more than comfortable in it. And it's like if somebody hits my car, I don't care. It doesn't matter.
This is always what Lamborghini owners say about like his Lamborghini's only 1 year old. It's like, yeah, I'm just driving around this old bucket of rust. Like I don't mind. I couldn't imagine having this year's model. That would be so stressful. You know, I feel like that is.
Yeah, mine
the thing
now
though.
is only worth 250 grand. So it's like, what's the point? I mean, just wreck that one. Just take it down to the junkyard. I mean, shit, dude. If the radio goes out, it's totaled.
You're right. I think that is the thing though. I feel like most people who have Lamborghinis like just don't like they buy the Lamborghini because they want something to happen to it. It's like they need to do something exciting with their money. They're like, yo, I need some kid to egg my car right now, otherwise I won't have anything to think about. And then they just buy a new Lambo.
I never got a chance. Like I wonder I wonder how pissed off I'd be if somebody did actually egg the Lamborghini. It wouldn't really annoy me that much, because like, I don't know. I feel like whenever I was a kid, I would like throw pencils and stuff out the bus window at people whenever we were driving home, and there were like kids that sometimes would throw them at me, and it would just give me like the greatest feeling of happiness because I knew that somebody was carrying the tradition forward.
Yeah.
It's just it's like the
used to
circle of
do-
life, like the Lion King.
Yeah, we used to take a bucket of water and we'd take toilet paper and we stick it in a bucket of water and
And
then
throw
that
it
at a car.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah.
Because it
And
sticks
then-
all over next to it, and there's no way,
it's
especially
awesome.
because like they're probably gonna get up at like maybe like 9 or 8 or whatever to go to work, and it's already caked on there because the sun's out. Oh man, we used to do that all the time in school.
You know
too.
the crazy thing that we found out?
What?
It works with tampons too. And the even crazier thing is they soak up food coloring. So you could go to the store and you could wreck shit.
Oh
You
my
could-
god, dude.
You could wreck shit with a little bit of red food dye, and all of a sudden
Oh,
somebody's day
no.
just got so weird.
That's awful.
It looked like
Wow.
the apocalypse happened. So yeah,
That's-
and somebody eventually did that to. one
Oh,
of
I
my
think they're gonna run
vehicles.
into the same issue here. This could be it if they don't break this shield. I'm pretty sure this is a wipe here. 3
They're
seconds.
feeling relatively confident. They just threw out a battle res. They're going to be able to.
Wow.
bring up
They
here,
actually
they're gonna be
pushed
able
it. They broke the shield and killed the Visage. Okay, dude, this is it. Everybody is alive. They already did have to use a battle res. This is where this is it. This could actually be the kill. All right, boys, here we go.
And they feel the exact same way that Asmon does there, because the second that we see them whittling down the Visage, they are going to bring up another player.
Yeah, dude,
Now
they
got
pop
the
that
full
res. They're
roster
ready
up.
to go.
That is exactly what we see. And we can
So
see them.
Look what they're
preliminarily
doing with their
standing up.
positioning here. They're keeping the 2 ads next to the Visage because they're ready for that Visage to spawn. They're not going to let what happened before happen again. They're going to wait for that Visage to go ahead and cast again. Then I'm almost sure they're going to move him back over to that last relic and try to finish off the fight. Moving out of that Cerebral Assault, nobody got hit by it. Not like my raids. Visage comes out again. They immediately get on it and delete the Visage. It's already below half health and it is dead in less than 5 seconds. And then as you can see over there, they immediately move over. They're going to push Zauzax over to 25%. This is where things get hard. So as soon as this damage is going to go out, everybody needs to do whatever they can to stay alive. You've got another Visage going out. They've got to burn down that Visage as fast as they possibly can. All damage is going out on it. They've got to do whatever they can. I don't know if they're going to make this one. This is so close. They're going to have to use every cooldown imaginable, and this might be it, but they actually survived the damage. They could keep going. This could actually be the kill. Only 2 people died. 3 are dead total, and then Fathul is going to be going. He's going to be transitioning soon. They're trying to recover, getting that last Visage dead, so they're going to be able to focus entirely on the boss and dealing with the last relic. And this is it. This is actually it.
This is fantastic. I mean, like you said, only 3 going to be down. They managed to deal with those Visages. They look like they're out of problems right now. The Storm Essence, which is typically very scary, it just looks like they're in a situation where,
okay, so
this is when we ask chat, where are you?
Okay, this is it right here. Yeah, where are you? They've got the Eldritch Abominations coming out, spawning. They need to make sure that they interrupt all of these Eldritch Abominations. If one cast go out, it's going to be a kill for sure. The Visage is actually about to spawn here, but by the time that it starts casting the Echo, they're already going to be able to damage down the Visage normally. If they kill this Visage, they kill the boss.
Yeah, but it looks like
They're not
going to
kill the
dead
Visage
first. But this is fantastic. This is one of those scenarios where we do see the potential for them to take it down. And I also want to bring up, you mentioned what we saw with positioning. They were so ready for everything that time around. We saw them start moving a little bit earlier than we saw
The
before.
planning
they
was
were
perfect.
ready. Yep, and now I believe that they've gotten Father down to about 26%, and they've gotten Zach's ass down to about 20%.
Very
Definitely,
low.
Yeah, it's.
I
Yeah,
think
go
that
ahead.
we're going to see a kill here. That, like, honestly, if we're going to see a kill on any poll anytime soon, it's going to be this one right here. Because you know how fucking hyped up they are right now. They got their best poll, they got the timing down, they got everything ready, and they had 3 people dead, and they were still able to push that Visage. This is it. This is where they can win. And they even survived the explosion with the Visage, which is no doubt something they're planning for next time.
Yeah, they really took a huge bite out of those bosses there. Got a pretty solid taste. They know what it feels like to get it down nice and low. I mean, like when you say 20%, they definitely got a good taste of Zach's ass there, managing to get it down to that area. They get past the scary mechanics. I do think one more time though, Storm Essence just seems to be
It's the cockblock of the fight. Like they get through that, they're fine. Because Storm Essence, let me go ahead and double check here with my what do you call it? With my dungeon journal, but I believe Storm Essence reduces your damage.
Oh, you're still subbed?
Yeah, I mean, of course. I mean, where else is my content going to come from?
Oh man, yeah, I had to Google it online. I didn't.
Yeah.
Got the dungeon journal and everything.
Yeah, Storm Essence does actually deal less damage, and it makes you deal less damage. So that's why they weren't able to kill that Visage in time, because the Storm Essence went out, and they have to have all of their damage, because it's basically they have to kill a Visage with double health. And that's really what's going to be difficult. And that's why they also pushed the larger mob, what's his name, Foulrak? I keep forgetting what he's called. Fathul. They pushed Fathul below.
Foulrak.
Yeah, Foul. Whatever.
Father. It's nice and easy.
Yeah, Father. I guess you could call him that. And they pushed him to 25% as early as possible, so there would be as little overlap between the storm phase, wherever he's doing the AoE raid damage, reducing everyone's damage down by 50%, and then also the window in which they're able to kill the Visage. So they have to plan this out in the right way. So at the end of the fight, this is basically what their kill order is going to be, I'm pretty sure. So they're going to keep the 2 adds next to the 3rd relic, and then they're going to kill the Visage. Then after they kill the Visage, after the 2 adds are next to the 3rd relic, Zach's ass is going to be at 26-ish%. They're going to then move him over to the 3rd relic, and then immediately transition that, and then push for the next Visage, and that's the one where everybody needs to do maximum damage, where he takes where he takes half damage. The Visage does effectively. Then after that, they need to push Father down to 25% and deal with the last Visage, and they have to do that in between the time. They have to deal, basically, it has to go Visage, Storm, WoW Visage, then another Storm, then Visage.
Yeah,
because they have to wait for that Visage to respawn whenever they originally killed it. As soon as they had the, that would be the high-end one. Sorry, it's hard for me to explain all of this, but that's basically what it is. I think I could do it better with like Microsoft Paint or something like that. Maybe I should do that.
Paint.
Yeah, I'll have to paint it out.
Really good. Yeah, I think that's always the best tool to describing raids.
Yeah.
I think Microsoft Paint. I still have some of my old MS Paints from ICC and shit. Like it is the best tool for raids. But I do want to say, when we talk about the Visages, it's always important to look at the comps and really see what they're able to deal with. That is the mechanic that these guys are the best suited to deal with. That's why we see these crazy timings coming out with the Visage. Like, they're able to just let it sit in a situation where it's rotted and dotted, so they're not going to have to worry about it after the fact. And also, they know that timing right now. When are we going to see the Shadow Priest snap onto it, throw those extra dots there? Are we going to see the Warlock actually decide to throw out that Bane and be able to get some big damage on there at that moment? Like, all of these things come into play, and they're able to deal with those Visages so perfectly. I think that's one of the most impressive things that we've seen thus far.
Oh, absolutely. Like, being able to kill the Visages is one of the big reasons why they have the comp that they do. Again, like, having to deal with the Visage while at the same time dealing with the Storm is really, really hard. That is the damage check of this fight. If they meet that damage check, they kill the boss. Now, the way they can also get around that is if they have everybody use a huge personal cooldown and survive through the damage that the Visage is going to deal whenever it gets to cast off. The only problem with that is because the Storm is going off at the same time, that means that if that takes anybody under 25% health, that will immediately kill them. So it makes dealing with that mechanic even more difficult because you effectively have 25% less health to work with.
Yeah, I'm seeing right now, too, some people, once again, starting to ask some questions about what we're watching. This is going to be Mythic just came out right now for Crucible of the Storms. So we are seeing Limit right now trying to get that world first kill. They are on the first boss of 2. The second boss we expect to be completely bananas. The first one already being a pretty huge challenge. EU has not gotten their reset yet, so they're trying to beat that reset. They want to try to get it. Do you know what time the reset goes out for EU?
Yeah. I'm sure people in chat do. I don't play EU, so I don't know offhand. Yeah, about how many hours from now does EU come online?
because I know we did see Fabo saying like going to bed right now, so we assume it's probably like at least 8 hours away.
All
Something
right,
like that.
yeah, basically like 6 to 8 hours from now. So we're probably
Okay.
going to see, the Method people boot up probably, in about midnight or so. So pretty close to whenever I'm going to bed, they're going to be starting everything up. Do you know if they're doing any sort of like a raid race or anything like that?
So I'm not sure what I can say
Yeah,
right
yeah,
now. If
yeah.
if anybody from Method wants to let me know, if anyone's like watching right now and knows what I can say, go ahead and message me. But I will say there's definitely going to be something to watch.
Well, I know, and
I'll be there.
I'll talk to you about that later, actually.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. But if there is, I mean, like, yeah, I actually really like this kind of stuff because I feel like it's what really kind of builds up the WoW community. Because, like, let's be honest, apathy about WoW is at an all-time high. I think even in WoD, like, people were like, oh, well, it's going to get better. But now, man, like, just the negativity and all, it's really, really high. And I'm not saying that it's ill-deserved or anything, but it is really high. And so I'd like to do whatever I can to try to build things up and make them positive.
Yeah, I tried to explain it to one of my friends today, actually. Just trying to describe kind of what it's like right now, because it's so hard to describe to somebody who doesn't play the game. And I was kind of telling her it's like if you went over to an ex's place and had to pick up all of your belongings. Like if you broke up with an ex and you had to go over and like pick up all your belongings. That's what it's like right now for a lot of people when they
For a
log on
while.
to play. Yeah, like they want it to go well, but it's pretty much doomed from the beginning. Like the whole reason that you're logging on is caked in negativity at times. And I think that a raid like this can be the thing to turn it in the right direction.
Oh yeah, I mean, this raid is amazing. Like I really, really like it a lot. And it's actually kind of odd whenever you can't win them all. Whenever you have like these raids that are extremely difficult, and looking back on the raids, right? What are the most fondly remembered raids? You're talking Trial of Valor recently, Nighthold, we were talking about that a lot earlier. Tomb of Sargeras, not so much for this example, right? Not so much for this example. Heroic Tomb of Sargeras I thought was great. Mythic, too much. And then, let's see, Throne of Thunder, Ulduar. What do all of these raids really have in common? They were extremely hard. Like, Throne of Thunder was incredibly difficult. So was, what do you call it? So was Ulduar. Ulduar was incredibly more challenging than any raid content that we had seen before it. And I think
Ulduar
that we can...
too. I think that one of the reasons Ulduar was so fantastic because of the functionality of those hard modes.
Blackrock like Foundry, there's another one right there. Blackrock Foundry was incredibly hard. You remember back then, like, people didn't even want to do it. They had to boost the item level of the gear from 395 to 700. I remember that people were just so fed up with Blackrock Foundry being really difficult, and it was causing a lot of burn.
Said.
Say what?
So Golgasaur in chat goes, so was Tomb of Sargeras though, and I think that is the really important thing to think about.
Well, it was unfair difficulty. It wasn't fulfilling difficulty. Ulduar and these other raids. Like, I mean, look at right there what they just did. That is something, like, it might sound really ridiculous and like silly, but the fact that they all moved right instead of half of them moving left, and then they mess up the debuff there, that's what coordination and high-end gameplay does.
It's about outplaying, right? And I think
that's coordination.
And some of those scenarios inside of that raid, when you do look back to a lot of the stuff that was going on in Tomb, it felt like a lot of it couldn't be outplayed. It was like all of a sudden there was just like this unsurmountable amount of soakage that needed to happen, and you couldn't have these moments where you really, through experience, said, when this happens, this is how we react. We all move to the right, for example, like you just mentioned. And I remember back in the day, like a few moments where something starts to go wrong, there isn't a chance for somebody to actually call out what needs to happen for the raid leader to say it. And everybody just reacts on that one front, and how good that feels. And I do feel like these mechanics right now build into that. And that's what it really does take to not only be a good raid, but to be a raid that's remembered.
Well, that's what it really is about. Like, whenever you can get to that level of a coordination as a team, that's whenever you really know you have something special. Like, obviously that was, another wipe. It's the way it goes. But just being able to execute those things, especially in like a non-verbal way, everyone just knows what to do. And I remember talking about this before. What?
Chat, everyone's like, oh my God, press D, move right, 700 IQ. I'm going to make a little bit of a challenge.
He just ran really fast. I can't, it's not even a big deal. He's just running really fast. You know, whenever
If
somebody
you made
breaks an Olympic record.
If you made a joke right now, if you
fucking
made a
right.
joke about them going right, I want you to push 1 right now in the chat, and then I want all of you to group up right now and try to race against Limit right now.
Yeah.
And we'll commentate.
Yeah,
over
stream
it
it so
you guys
I
make
can
a right group
commentate
and
on it
everybody
too.
can-
Please stream it so I can commentate on it. I would love to do that.
Let's commentate these guys. They want to talk a big game. Let's see what you guys can do. Let's watch, guys. No smiling for anybody.
Yeah,
Stop
relax.
that right now.
This game
push
isn't
1.
fun. Nobody should be smiling.
No smiles. This is serious.
Yeah, we don't play this game for fun.
Wait, did you lose the Warfront, by the way?
Yeah.
Yeah, you actually can lose those?
Yeah. If your commander dies, you can lose them. Like, I didn't know. And
I actually can't wait to make a video reacting to your stream if you want to react to that a little bit later.
Oh, I will, absolutely. It's the human centipede of content. I have no problem with that at all. Only took 30 minutes. Yeah, I know. Wasting dollars. No, dude, it's like the way that I look at it is that I think these games and like everything, these are fun, right? And like even though obviously the game is like not in the best state that it's in, maybe I'm just kind of weird, and I'm sure I am, but I always find like little things to enjoy in the game. And it also doesn't mean that I can't be excited for things that are happening in the game, right? I mean, I think that everybody here, like, let's be honest, everybody here just wants the game to be better. And hopefully that'll happen sometime soon, but we'll see.
Go
ahead.
I made kind of a list of grievances with the game this morning. I was just going about kind of talking about everything.
Is it longer than the Bible?
It was pretty long. It was definitely pretty long. We all know I like to talk for a long period of time.
Yeah.
Like I sat down and I actually recorded myself talking about it. Just like, you know, I didn't have anyone to talk to about it, so I just recorded myself, and then I listened to myself and I talked back to myself, and it just became like this huge mess. I recorded straight for an hour and a half, and I think the main thing was not at a single point did the actual raid encounters come up. Like the raid encounters are all so good, and I think that when we look at something like this, that's why this is the rallying point. These races have by far been the most exciting thing about BFA. The thing is a lot of the rewards thus far have been absolute. I mean, it's like I feel like most of the rewards are like going to the local dog park and then picking up all of the dog poop and putting it into your pocket and then bringing it home and like being like, yeah, I went shopping, I went to the store, I found some really cool stuff. It's like, no, you didn't. That's a pile of shit. Don't try to lie to me.
Well, what it's like is it's like investing in lottery tickets.
How's it investing? Oh, okay, I see that.
Yeah, because you just buy a bunch of lottery tickets. It's like instead of investing in like Microsoft or, you know, U.S. Treasury bonds or, you know, like maybe Google or Amazon. No, you're investing in lottery tickets. That's basically what BFA is.
So the rewards are dog shit. Just say it. Did you not just hear my fucking analogy, dude? What? Where are your ears, man?
What do you mean?
He said, just say that the rewards are dog shit. I just made like a 5-minute analogy.
That was literally, that wasn't even an analogy. You're talking about dog shit both ways. Come on.
Just say it, you pussy. You won't say that they're dog shit. It's like, what the fuck did I just say?
Everybody knows it, okay? Like, it's unfortunate that obviously...
He's not even going to hear us right now. This dude has the stream muted. He's just coming in complaining, not even listening. He's just watching. Yeah. Say that they're dog shit.
Oh, I hate the game. Well, I mean, I get that people don't like the current WoW. Like, I mean, I totally understand that. I mean, I'm probably at the front of that crowd, but for me, because I do like so much completionism stuff, if you want to like WoW, my best advice for you is play the different aspects of the game. And if you play the game from a completionist mindset, I feel like it's going to take a lot longer for you to get bored of the game. And I know that's not something that's for everyone, but for me personally, that's something that's allowed me to just keep motivation and always keep playing the game. And this actually does look like a good pull here. Here we go.
Yeah, only one down right now. We know that it kind of comes in waves of difficulty right now based off of how the mechanics do come across. That first one's relatively early. This 50% mark is always going to be difficult. You can see those abominations coming up. Also going to have a visage to deal with here. Got to make sure that that fear does not go off. And then after that, the next big one is going to be coming up relatively quickly when we see these guys get whittled down even further to that 30% mark. The visage going to be dealt with. No fear going to be going out. They feel good. They're going to use a battle res as well.
Oh, dude, they're ready to go. I mean, this is it. I mean, they're getting back into the same place that we wanted to see before. I mean, this is what it's all about right here. They've already pushed 3 different relics at the same time. They've got to push that second relic one more time with Zalzax, and then they're going to be able to move over to that Trident again, which is probably where they're going to place the next Visage. And then after that, they're going to move to the last relic and be ready to actually go ahead and give this another big try. Here we go. Here we go.
Yeah, this next relic is kind of the test. It is going to be that brick wall. Once again, do need to mention just how easy it is for them to deal with these visages, but the important thing is going to be all the positioning that they can actually set up here, moving forward into what the difficult part of the fight has been for them so far.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is basically what they're doing now is they're wiping. That's what they're doing now. So they're wiping.
Yeah. That was right into the cone, I think.
No, the cone hadn't spawned by then. I don't know what that kill was, what that death was.
Yeah, that was a little bit interesting. I actually was so excited. I
was too. I was like, damn, all right, we're gonna see an actual pull, but unfortunately, it's not the way it went. I mean, like this is what progression is like. Okay, like I'm sorry to say, but this is progression.
Oh,
good.
Ozio said Blizzard killed them. Okay, that makes sense. Keep the race nice and interesting here.
Yeah.
I can see in the other chat they're going, Rich didn't know nothing. I actually need to double check to see what did take them down there. The thing to note is that was still a really good pull. I think it's important to kind of look at pulls and say, was that a good pull? Was that a bad pull? I think we saw maybe 2 or 3 pulls that were a little bit sketchy for them, but now they're kind of on the right track yet again.
Well, they're pretty, like, either they wipe to like a one-shot or they're going to be getting to the same spot, right? Mm-hmm. And we're seeing less individual player errors per pull, and I think that's a really good sign that we actually can see a kill coming up really soon. What's the reasoning behind leaving the Storm Relic to last?
Yeah, so I'm a little bit surprised that they haven't tried, and maybe this is something in Mythic that I'm not seeing in notes or anything. So basically, each relic is going to have those added effects, but why not? Like, when we see them struggling on that particular phase, why not do it first, at least just for practice, even if it's not the order that you want to do it in?
Says the Storm Relic makes other things harder and it's pretty much guaranteed to kill people, so you want people to stay alive for most of the fight.
I think that's fair.
See,
but why not like do it once or twice? And maybe
feel
this
like,
was something that they did earlier. Like,
yeah,
why not
I feel like they probably have a really good reason for it. I just don't know what it is, because it's like, it seems like it's such an obvious solution, and honestly, I wasn't really fully prepared. Like, I've done this fight before, but do I understand the fight on the intricacies, on the level of intricacy that they do? No, I don't. So it's hard for me actually to understand specifically what they're trying to do, and that's why I've been trying to learn everything myself.
I wasn't prepared either. I literally,
I forgot it was coming out today.
Yeah. I literally, dude, I had no idea either, because I'm getting ready for the EU reset. And, I literally, like, I have a friend over right now just confused as all hell. Has no idea what the heck is going on the screen. Because I was excited when you messaged me. I was like, wait, what the heck? Yeah, sure. Like, let's do this. It'll be fun. But yeah, like, I just have very confused human being, like, just sitting here watching, having no idea what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, that's basically how I think a lot of people are, but I'm sure they have an opinion. Like, one thing that you can always be certain of is that even if someone has no idea of what's going on the screen, they have a way that they can improve what they're doing. They always know what they're doing wrong. That's very important to remember. Yeah,
and now I do want to mention Shadow Priest, because
there's a lot of
people. Yeah, a lot of people I see coming into chat. We're going to get new faces over time as we progress further and further into the raid, people popping in and out. And a lot of people are saying, like, why so many Shadow Priests? So, Zach, for kind of everybody asking right now, like, why so many Shadow Priests? What are all the things that you think?
Shadow Priests are really good at dealing damage to 2 targets. Now, if you look in the fight, there are 2 targets. So that makes Shadow Priests really good. That is the main reason, is that they have amazing 2-target cleave damage. They're ranged, so they've got a lot of advantages, and it just makes the fight a lot easier having ranged, especially with like all the different void zones and things that are going out. Also, they can dispel. That is a really, really big point too. Yes, they can dispel as well. So there's a lot of things that Shadow Priest bring to the table for this fight that no other class really has access to, and that's basically why. Both Warlocks and Shadow Priest can multi-dot and self-dispel. Yeah, there's that too. Do you still have Imp Dispel as a Warlock?
Yeah, you can singe magic, I believe it's still called,
Yeah.
with your amp, and sometimes we'll see them opting into it. And also one of the things too, as a warlock, you're going to be looking at your pet pretty much for the ability that you're using it for, because the damage is somewhat normalized
Right.
across the board. So I think right now the question that I would ask as a new player is, well, why not more warlocks? Like, why are we seeing all shadow priests? And it just look at the damage that I think
Yeah.
the answer is very much there. The damage that they have been able to do on these shadow priests is
Well, it's also
bonkers.
like, so basically there's an ability that you have. It's the weak aura that THD has on the screen, and I'll go ahead and I'll point it out whenever it happens so I can show it to you guys. It's basically called Promises of Power, and the more damage, there's a, see, it just got a stack right there, one Promises of Power. It makes you deal more damage, but it also reduces your maximum health pool. So as you can see, the Shadow Priests are oftentimes going right to the edge of the raid and then dispelling themselves to where the dispel circle barely clips them on the outside. The reason for that is that every single time that you dispel Promises of Power, it deals a large amount of damage to the person that was dispelled. So, or is it the dispeller? To the dispeller. So obviously they're dealing the damage to themselves. And that's another reason why Shadow Priests are very good, is because they can completely manage and deal with this debuff on their own without needing help from the healers. So Shadow Priests not only have great multi-dot cleave, but they can also handle one of the most difficult mechanics in this fight all on their own.
Yeah, and then also on top of that, so the way that the Visage works, it's going to be below 35%. Everybody's like, yo, the Warlock's so high on the meter. Now, I'm assuming that something that we're seeing the Shadow Priests do as well is, so this Visage is out right now. They're going to be able to dot it down. They're going to bring it down before it actually gets its cast off, and then they're going to keep it down with their dots. Like, it's going to stay nice and low. Those dots are going to be kept rolling there, and you can actually talent in to Twist of Fate. And if you are talented into that, that means like a permanent 10% increase to damage, right?
Yeah,
Pretty much
every
throughout the
single time
entirety
that
of the
you
fight.
damage something that's below, I believe, 35% health, it might be 20. They've changed it a couple of times. But every single time you damage something at low health, you basically get a damage boost. So Shadow Priests have a number of ways that make them uniquely powerful for this fight. And that's why we're seeing so many of them. That's why I was thinking earlier, I was talking about this, like, what is it going to be like for the, your just traditional world 200-ish guilds that are going into this fight and going into this raid without an army of
It's gonna
Shadow
look like
Priests?
that.
Yeah,
That's probably like
that
that right there.
probably just like that. Yep, there you go.
Yeah, I think that because we talk about the gear as well, and we all know it doesn't get higher than 420, right? It really isn't get much higher than 420. Anything beyond that in gear is ridiculous. It would be absolute chronic if you're able to have gear over 420. We all know just how much that would actually take. A lot of things have to go your way to be able to
You've just got to
surpass
get
that
really
level.
lucky. I mean, that's all it comes down to. And like usually, you're gonna have like maybe one person in this raid is really lucky, and they've got like 421 item level or 420 item level, but probably everyone else is hovering around 414 to 417. And
Yeah, I think we
yeah.
also know that a lot of them are going to be a little bit lower because
Well,
Shadow
they're
Priest
playing on
isn't gonna
alts
be
and
their main.
everything. And yeah, many of these characters are alts. But even with them being alts, they're still much more powerful than their mains because of how efficient Shadow Priests are, which is crazy.
It's a tough question though to ask when I brought this up, and we ended up not really talking about it as much because it ended up being a really high pool. But making that decision as a progression guild, when you look and you say, okay, Shadow Priest is insane, we want to rock as many as we can. If that number's 8, sure. Like, they actually figure that out. They look at different things utility wise. Obviously, you need to bring your healers, you need to bring your tanks. What else do we need? Okay,
Right.
do we have a lust? Do we have this? Do we have this? And you check off all those boxes, and in any remaining spot, you say you want a Shadow Priest, right? Sure. Maybe you still want to have something for single target damage for a particular thing, sure, but as many Shadow Priests as possible. They fall on this number for Shadow Priest, but then you have to ask yourself the question, how well are you going to be able to deal with all the mechanics at hand? How comfortable are you going to be? And you look at the other race, and obviously we didn't have limits POVs, but I always think about what we actually saw the hunters do. when we were watching the hunters play on their mains as hunters against Jaina, those clutch little moments that you could not have on anything except your main. Like,
Oh
absolute
yeah, that
skill
is.
cap.
I really love seeing, like, class stacking is cool to see, but what also is cool to see is people that are all playing on their mains and playing at that high level that they are used to. Right? It's like something happens, the muscle memory just tells them what button to press. You know, they know what they're doing, but they automatically know exactly how to handle whatever it is. And I really, really like seeing that. And that's one of the things that I think is going to be really interesting about that second boss, because I think that we are going to see a lot more mains come in for that boss.
Yeah, I think that on that one, as much as maybe Shadow Priest, a lot of people still feel like Shadow Priest may be strong. I think that you want to have that comfort, that skill cap that you have
Yeah.
when you are on your main. I definitely do. Like even hunters, I think that there were a lot of interesting things
Well,
about
you
Jaina.
remember, when was it? Was it like BlizzCon? I forgot when it was, but somebody, like, DKs at that point were really bad, but somebody brought a DK into the raid. Like, or sorry, I think, was it BlizzCon for like PvP? I remember there was like something. Maybe it was like one of the tournaments.
It's actually funny.
People playing like non-meta stuff. Like, I think it was Mez that was playing a DK.
Well, so actually, the DK got brought out before Mez even had the opportunity to play the DK.
Yeah.
It was, I believe that was an opening week. We started to see
really
DKs come out. The Asian teams actually broke the meta, but also in the MDI race that was going on at the time. I forget what the actual race was called. We did, but we also saw a lot of DKs, and I'm not sure if a lot of people expected that, because that also had some PTR stuff in mind, because you don't have any capping onto the AoE, so you're able to just blow stuff up as Unholy and just rock out.
The 1 million DPS.
Oh, it's nuts to watch. So that was something that we actually did see. So DKs had a big effect on BlizzCon, but ultimately I think the winner was.
Oh no! Obviously DKs didn't define BlizzCon or anything. But the point that I was trying to make is the fact that you can see someone like Mez, who is one of the best DK players in the world, still able to make it work because he's just that comfortable and that good at the class. And that's something that I think is really interesting whenever you see everybody in an entire raid coming together with that same mentality. As you just saw, we lost somebody, that person got rezzed up, they've already had to use a battle res. I think at this point in time, they probably haven't gotten that long of a pull for a while, so they're just trying to play this out and get back to where they were at. I think there's also maybe a little bit of catching up that they feel like they might need to do right now.
Yeah. It's really fun to kind of. I usually don't get to watch chat when I commentate. I feel like the only time I've ever been able to do it is really with raid races. At the method one, I'm able to do it, and here I'm able to. But it's really cool to kind of see what people are thinking, like, while this stuff is going down. I know a lot of it's obviously memes, but
I did. Speaking of memes, which at least I hope it was a meme. Someone asked, "Do you think that Blizzard is making this raid so hard so EU will have a chance?" No, bro.
Not at all.
No, bro. Like, that's not what's going on.
I've said this a million times before, and I don't necessarily know where Blizzard does stand on something like this.
Yeah.
But I really do feel like, especially with different things like Mythic Dungeons, the focus should be on balancing it around us, the players, the people who are going to be doing it the most, not necessarily the people who are competing for a race or things like that. I think that the format should be the thing that actually comes into play to balance it, to make it interesting to watch. The actual game itself should be tuned for players. It should be tuned for people. Yes, people that want to put in the time and effort and become very good, but they shouldn't be like, okay, we want the world first race to last for 7 days or something.
Yeah,
like that.
I mean, I do think Blizzard would absolutely be making a mistake if they started developing content for world first players, and I think that's something that they've struggled with for a long time, because what they're really kind of battling here is community perception. So even if this fight is super easy, even if the fight is super easy for Method and for Limit and for all of these other amazing guilds, for Bill and Bill's band of bumblefucks, well, Bill's still gonna have a problem. Guild. Yeah, hey, dude, that's the way it goes. And Bill's still gonna have a problem with this guild, and you have to remember, like, 90%, 99% of players aren't playing at this level. So whenever content is developed for people that are at this 1% level, that's why people do get frustrated with Blizzard. But the positive is that you do get to watch races like this. And I know that it's obviously a balancing act for Blizzard, and they do nerf the content later on. I wish they had a better way of dealing with that. I kind of had hoped that something like Valor upgrades would work as nerfs, and that way Blizzard wouldn't necessarily have to do them, so everybody would be experiencing the same fight. This is a tight point right here. The Visage just spawned with the shield up. Visage is, oh boy, that's 2 people dead already. They're going to be able to kill the Visage, but they've already lost 2 people, so they can only get 1 battle res out right now. This could actually be a really, really big problem for them going into this last part of the fight.
But that's also, is this a departure from what we've seen in other polls? I think that maybe we are seeing them make a few tweaks here, not only in timings, but in relic usage. So that is something very important to know.
No, I think I'm pretty sure this is the same. Maybe I just haven't really been paying that good of attention, but I feel like this is probably the same combination. So right now, this is whenever things get tight. This is where things get real, okay? So basically, Fthul and Zeradas, they're trying to get them as close to 25% as possible while they're waiting for the Visage to spawn. So ideally, the Visage spawns, Zalzax is at 26%, they push the Visage, then they take Zalzax over to that last thing. See, they're taking him over right now. There's a Visage spawning. This is where things get tight. This is where they get real. All damage right now is going directly onto the Visage. That Cerebral Assault was really kind of bad timing, but they are going to be able to kill that Visage. They're moving Zalzaj over to that last Storm Crown, and then he's going to empower the Relic with the Storm Crown. This is where the damage needs to go out. They need to burn down this Visage as fast as possible. They are 1 damage down, though, so they're going to have to do everything that they can to damage it down. And it looks like they might not even be trying. Oh, no, it looks like, okay, never mind. No, they're doing a little bit better. The guy's mouse is like right
Here's
there
the
on top of it, so it's hard to see it.
No,
okay, there's the
terrifying
cast
echo
that
goes out. Tremor Totem.
Tremor Totem. Nobody died. Nobody died. They are so close to dying. Okay, that's
dies.
the first one that goes out. 1 person did die. Okay, I can't win them all. And then
Yeah,
Fthul, they're going to go
turn
ahead
this
and push him.
camera a little bit over. Thank you. We're going to get that turned over just a little bit
Yeah.
here. But yeah, this is the Tremor Totem that a lot of people were talking about. They
Yep,
do
there
use
it is.
that. They lose 1 DPS, but think about all the damage that ultimately they were able to
Yeah,
save.
they
with
gained
that.
so much from that. So right now, what they need to do is they need to push Fthul to 25%. If they push the Fthul to 25%, he's going to do the Storm effect. If he does the Storm effect right now, that's going to be going off before the Visage becomes respawned. Now, right now, they need to interrupt the Eldritch Abominations, wait for that Visage to spawn, and kill that Visage. The one thing that they do have going for them right now is the fact that the Visage will not be casting fully during the shock ability. If they get him for this terrifying echo, they kill the boss. If they survive.
That looks so difficult to navigate. So let's say that they have an extra 2 DPS up. That still looks...
No, see, here's the problem. Like, basically, they were not able to push Fthul fast enough. If they had pushed Fthul faster, the Storm effect would have happened earlier, which would have meant, because the Visages are on a separate spawn timer than obviously the Relics are. So they need to kill the first Visage during the Storm, and then they need to push Fthul. Then they need to push Fthul as fast as possible, so by the time that Fthul's Storm energy or Storm thing happens, then we kill the Visage again whenever he doesn't have the debuff. So the Visage doesn't artificially have more health.
So basically,
it's very, very tight timing there, and they have to get it right. And the reason why did they not get it right? It's very simple, because they had people dead during the fight. If they didn't have people dead there, they would have made that push timing, and it would have been fine. It would have been a kill, 100%.
I'm still laughing about all the different ways you said fool.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's like Undasta. I invented like 18 different ways of saying Undasta, and they were all wrong.
Yeah, but you think that the pressure right now is going to be there? They need to be able to.
They have the damage, 100%. They have the damage. They just have to get the timing right and get to that point without having anybody dead. But if they lose somebody and they can't res them, they're going to lose the amount of damage that they need in order to push them to that point before the Visage comes out. So the Visage. So again, like, let's talk about timing here. Let me go ahead. I'll open up Paint. All right.
Oh, I'm excited for this.
Sorry, that was my strategy for my gardening stream. Give me 1 second. Give me 1 second. I forgot I had that up. Okay. All right. New save changes. Okay. So let's see here. All right. I'll pull it up and I'll show you guys. I saw somebody put that in chat. I thought it was really funny. Okay. I'm just gonna pull it up. Okay. So Visage 1. Then after that, They do Zalzax 25, and then they have Visage 2. Then they have Fathul 25, and then after that, they have to do Visage 3. This is the order they have to do things in. So this needs to happen. This needs to happen before this happens. And the cast has to go off completely. And this one has 2x health. That's the way the fight's supposed to work, okay? This is their strategy for the end phase. And right now, it looks like they're going to allow this Visage right here to cast.
Okay.
Do you guys understand?
Yeah. Now I do. I get
okay.
it.
So this is, this is the timings and everything, okay?
Though. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I actually do understand the fight a lot better now.
Good.
I'm going to screenshot that and actually use that tomorrow.
Thank you.
Okay, cool. I get it. So as you can see right here on your screen, as we do look at this attempt, exactly what Asmongold just illustrated is going to come to fruition. We are in that second phase right now of the diagram, and if everything does go according to plan, they are going to be able to flow through and make it a little bit further and potentially get their first kill.
Oh yeah, I mean, this is again one good pull to get it down. They just have to have everybody alive and get through it all the way through. And honestly, they're going to be able to get this. Like I'm really feeling like we're going to see a kill probably in like maybe 5 pulls from now, 100%. Well, not 100%, but pretty close. I really think that they've got it. At this point, it's theirs to lose. All they need to do is execute the mechanics and do them correctly, and that's it. That's all it needs to do. They have the strategy down. They know everything else that they need to do. There is nothing more that they need to learn at this point. And
what you're basically saying at this point, they just need to kill the boss then?
They just need to kill the boss. That's it. And also, one of the big changes that they made that really is making this fight a lot easier for them, is going to help them with their push timing, is the fact that they are not killing the Visage that's going to be casting the terrifying scream during Zalzax getting the storm relic. That is a huge amount of damage that they have to deal with. But whenever you combine their personal cooldowns with also Tremor Totem, and also they're going to be able to handle it. But what makes that part even more difficult is during the storm explosion. That means that if any player goes below 25% and the storm goes off, it kills them. So that is like, that is everything needs to be focused around that moment. If they play that out and they do it correctly, that's the kill. It's like one of those fights where you have to wait until 6 minutes into the fight in order to see, okay, well, maybe 2 minutes into the fight this time. For 6 minutes into the fight, for it to actually get hard and for people to get to the point where they need to work on it, that is what that point is in this fight.
Yeah, I would be a little curious to see too, because it is one of those things where a few mechanics are going off at the same time. Like, I'm a little bit curious, like how many of these deaths are to something like Witness the End, or how many of them are coming in because of this and that. That's one of the things that's a little bit tricky without actually seeing some of the death logs and things like that. But all in all, I do agree with you with the fact that they are very close.
Oh yeah, I mean, this is one pull away from a kill, 100%. They just need to get it in there without having any sort of a mistake. And like, that might sound simple, but coordinating 20 people to execute something correctly for that long is really hard to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think they're having a short little break here. I learned something too, besides from the raid. A few people called me a cuck.
What?
And
they called you McCuck or Cuck?
McCuck, like they call that one dude that.
Oh,
and they call me that.
Yeah, I know who he is.
I think that they got confused, and that's a really. I realized you really shouldn't call anyone that. It's a really mean thing to say.
Well, it's really damaging, and like for somebody's self-esteem, like that.
I think we should all agree right now in this chat to never call anyone the cuck ever.
No.
Having lived through it now,
it was hard, wasn't it? I mean, imagine him. Like, he's been having to deal with that for 4 years.
I think I understand why somebody might get so angry at something like that. I don't think it's a very cool thing to say.
Of course not. No. They are taking a 40-minute break, so we're going to call it for today. I'm going to go ahead and get some dinner and chill out. And Rich, we'll talk later on about what we'll do tomorrow.
Text me, dude. Yo, thanks for having me. And yeah, text me.
Yo, dude, thanks a lot for coming on. Like, you were fucking killing it. Like, yo, boys, can we get some hearts in the chat for Rich? Go ahead and put Rich's Twitter and his Twitch in the channel, okay, guys? Everybody give Rich a follow right now, okay? Everybody give Rich a follow. He's a great guy. He makes great content. He's on regularly, and you don't have a job now, so you've got more time to stream.
Yeah. I got fired, so I'm just
yeah,
gonna be
dude. There you go.
Yeah. So that's pretty much it for me. I'm just gonna be doing this and screaming when Asmongold hits me up. But yeah, hit me up a little bit later, and we'll talk.
Absolutely, man. And also another huge fucking shout out to everybody in Limit, and specifically THD Lock, who allowed me to restream his progress. Really, really nice of him to do that. Really fucking appreciate it. And because of that, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to send him a host, and we're going to go ahead and probably just pick things up. I might not be on tomorrow. I might be on tomorrow. I don't know yet. Check my Twitter, follow my Twitter, and you're going to be able to find out what's going on. But let's get some hearts in the chat again for THD Lock. Whenever I send them to host, make sure you send them to follow. Thank you guys so much for watching. Really fucking appreciate it. And I really enjoy doing this. How did you guys like the stream doing this? Did you guys enjoy this?